I just want to know.
Wow, there were only 3.
The only reason people bid low for city stuff is it's a good time.
Yeah.
Keeps their people safe over summer. Yeah.
I'm sure the work is easy.
We used to do a lot, well, I did some of those.
Yeah, like Squire, they said, yeah, we're full. And you guys don't pay.
I was the final review. As I was going through the final review of the mail. It's just that something, keep it going.
I did send an email.
Spell check.
Good catch.
Good catch. Well, 40 years ago, there was no spell check, you know, they filled out stuff. It was not misspelled. There you go, that's right, it's not misspelled. But they were still process, no artificial intelligence, maybe you don't need. Anyway, so. Whoops.
Those concepts forward. There's been a time or two where they did that.
Yeah.
Something.
And then, you know, it's great.
Yeah, we're just talking about it was professional expert, you know.
That was my only contribution to the
Well, he's.
He doesn't more than
John Michelle I'm gonna bring you a product. My husband likes us tracks. I'll bring this up.
Did you see it? Hey, Chief, stay on trouble recorder. How are you?
Alright, okay. But you have responses.
That's okay.
You guys, since the mayor's not here and I'm pro tem, I think the food is here. Are you okay if we have a prayer and get our food and then wait to leave? Right? Yep. Okay, we'll have Tom offer.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the food that's here and for those who prepared it, made sure that we're taken care of. We're thankful for the city we have the opportunity to serve. We're grateful for this time of year where hearts are naturally drawn to charity and goodwill toward their fellow man. May we feel that spirit permeate this meeting in our lives. We pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
What are the varieties?
Okay, so you have the treats for someone?
Just bonus.
Yeah, just bonus.
Yeah, bonus treats.
Bonus holiday treats.
Look at Dan Cross.
No, nothing good. It's ham or turkey sandwich from Honey Baked Ham, so.
Oh, I wonder who got that. Yeah, I'll take one of things. I was just about to turn around and get one, but yes, thank you. Oh. Go back up quick. Mayor, we started with a prayer and give food when you were out. Your mayor pro tem took over well.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were here and your food was here. You can hire me.
You see your I just had
Turkey or ham?
They do.
okay, they get like 1 to 1.
Yeah. And some of them. What was the, like, they'll just have the meeting.
David's got some here that Yes. Is Jacob? Short-term rental.
Ma'am? You got amazing life. You know that, she's just. I mean, not that you're not amazing.
Hey Pete, good choice on dinner.
No, this one, side by side.
That's what they posted.
Daughter. No, she's been out here yet?
So.
They don't do
So, like, she did those two then? Oh, so you didn't do anything. Okay. So then we have two shifts.
Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Sorry we were late, we were in another meeting, and now we're all here, so. Like item number one, is Jake Summers, who's gonna update us where he's at on short-term rentals.
So to first start on the update is just basically to kind of give a update or a result of recent short-term rental regulation that occurred in our administrative law court that we have here. In this particular case, the short-term rental property was cited for 3 separate violations of the Orem City Code. First was improper.
goat house?
Yes.
Oh, you know how to say that.
It is the goat house. We are approaching the end of the appeal period. I think the appeal period expires tomorrow. So I'm not gonna go into all of the ins and the outs of the case, but give you kind of an overview of the case itself. But in this particular property, it was cited for 3 separate violations. One is keeping of animals in violation of the ordinance. Second was renting the property in violation of our single family definition. And then ultimately violation of Appendix A for improper use of the property, in violation of our zoning rules. So really, part of the main problem with this one particular property was the number of individuals that were renting the short-term rental. We would have business groups rented for a retreat event where 20 to 50 people were responding to the property. We had evidence presented where there was a sorority involved with in excess of 200 people there at the property on one evening. And so really we were able to provide with a lot of help from the neighbors, photos, evidence of the frequency and the number of people that were coming to and out of this property itself. With that, our administrative law judge found that we had met this burden of proof that there had been a violation of the single family definition and that the short-term rental was in violation of the city code. We also used Appendix A. Now, Appendix A is at the very back of our code, and we reference it in Orem City Code 22-19-1. We basically say that any use has to fall in line with the outline of Appendix A, and it goes through every different use identification that we've put into this appendix. And in particular, we pointed out that SLU code or use code for wedding reception centers 6292 would encompass like a business retreat or wedding receptions or events that like as an event center. And that type of use within any residential zone, whether it be R5 all the way through R20, was a non-permitted use. And our administrative law judge also found that we had met that requirement of evidence in this case. As a backup argument, we also had presented the fact that short-term rental use is not listed in our appendix. However, very other uses similar to short-term rentals, like rooming and boarding houses, transient lodging, those are also non-permitted uses within any residential zone. And based on the arguments we presented to the administrative law judge, the court held that that short-term rental was operating in violation of our city code. And then they ordered that short-term rental cease operations and not continue to rent that as a short-term rental. Until the city adopted regulations and that they were in line with those regulations. And so the neighborhood was quite happy with the result from this case. Really brings us to what though our next steps need to be as a city.
So how did you communicate that to them?
To the neighbors? We had a group of the neighborhood there at the hearing. We had coordinated prior to the hearing to have certain members of the neighborhood be able to testify, present evidence, and then other neighbors were there just to be supportive. And then we just had phone conversations and email conversations with neighbors.
Thank you.
All
Thank you
along
for
the way.
doing that. That's amazing. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So right now, we can keep the status quo and what it is. Yes. Oh, sorry, I thought you were raising your hand.
No,
Okay. Okay.
That's this level. This is just eating.
So the next steps would be, how would the city want to move forward with any sort of a regulation or regulatory scheme, if any? As I looked at other cities and other ways that we could branch out, is we could expand our already existing landlord-tenant program. We do have a landlord-tenant licensing scheme where anybody who is renting out property, right now our ordinance says any property, any period of time, 1 month or longer, falls under this. So short-term rentals technically don't fall under our landlord-tenant program, but we can expand that. And in so expanding, we could adopt a licensing fee, have an information center where we collect the contact information for the property owner. Part of that also having a detailed site plan where they have to have off-site parking for that short-term rental. We could place restrictions, as I think Councilmember Millen had indicated, not allowing them in ADUs would be something that we may want to consider. Possible geographic or per capita limitations for the number of short-term rentals. Another concern about short-term rentals that I've heard both from council members as well as just general public is the number of short-term rentals you have within a community may increase the cost of housing within the community. So we may want to look at some sort of cap or limitation.
Right, and that's what we want to clarify here, right? Is, if we're doing ADUs in order to increase affordable housing, and yet we're pulling some of those out of the market for Airbnbs, we're kind of not helping ourselves.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So can you have an Airbnb, can you have Airbnb in Orem and it work?
If you were to ask me my legal opinion right now, my argument is no.
I know people are like, reservation about, do that.
My argument would be that we do not currently permit that as a use as our use.
You say Airbnb or ADU?
That's any short-term,
Airbnb,
short-term rental.
Airbnb, yeah, whatever. I think,
You're saying currently it's not legal?
That would be my opinion, that would be the argument I would take, is that right now, our ordinances do not permit short-term rental use in the city.
And yet we receive more transient room tax from Airbnb than any hotel or otherwise.
We do, even though they're not legal. Okay, so it's illegal tax.
I am sensitive to people who have, that's one source of income for them and maybe they're lower income, I have some, if it's not large groups, and maybe there's a limit of a family, I don't know.
And I think that would be the intent of this regulatory scheme, is not to prohibit short-term rentals, but to provide that short-term rental operators are operating consciously with the neighborhood that they exist. Also that they're providing safety for the renters that are coming to use their property. So that we manage in a way that's reasonable and basically that it is also cognizant of the fact that they're in a residential zone.
How would you answer the question, based on everything you think, why it took so long for the goat house to become an issue? And it didn't become an issue until all of people came to city council and made an issue.
So my answer to that is, I don't I don't think that it was not, the city was not responding, it was taking time for NIT, or Neighborhood Preservation Unit, to collect evidence to be able to prosecute that through the administrative law hearing. We have been working on this issue probably about 30 to 45 days prior to this group coming to the city council. As we were working through the process, they were wanting to see a larger regulatory code be implemented by the city. And we actually, our advice, as I worked with, in particular, Mr. Astle, was to, or Mr. Estelle, was to come to the city council, present their voices, and then we could move forward with a regulatory scheme to address this. But we were well in efforts to respond to the Goat House in particular, and we had already started that process.
I do remember, we have talked about short-term rentals during my 8 years, and I don't know how long it's been, and it may have been in response to something from the state. Steve, do you remember?
Well, a couple of years ago, the state did pass some legislation. They were considering regulating short-term rentals themselves. Ultimately, they decided not to do that, but what they did was say that cities can't prosecute somebody for advertising a short-term rental. That was sort of a compromise they reached on that legislation, which you can argue whether that makes a lot of sense or not, but it's my understanding, maybe Jake was gonna get to this, but I think Jesse might be able to speak to it as well. I think the legislature may be undertaking or taking another look at short-term rentals again this year and proposing some regulations that would apply statewide, so.
Because we have looked at that before. It was not.
And that's really,
So if I were to summarize, the state has affected our ability to enforce. The city does have related regulations on code already that we have successfully taken through our administrative law judge process. Our administrative law judge process is relatively new within the last handful of years. In terms of moving forward, we just want to make sure that we have tempered, measured, cognizant path forward. Hopefully, well, that isn't going to make everyone happy, but makes everyone happier or is thoughtful of them. Now, looking forward, one of the very next steps we see on the horizon is the state legislature is going to re-engage on this subject in the next legislative session, and we've been providing an additional set of framework do's and don'ts for service. So,
yes. So there is currently a draft bill that is going to be addressing short-term rentals and really have requirements for municipalities to adopt ordinances or regulations if they're going to allow short-term rentals to be operated within their municipality. It is just a draft bill at this point, so I didn't put all of the ins and the outs of the bill on this presentation. Based on that fact, I think really the city's position here should be continue to research, prepare, and then see what the ultimate outcome is at this legislative session. And then based on what bills are passed as it regards to short-term rental regulations, that we then respond at the end of the session.
You know who's pushing that legislation, if it's the pro rental or
From the reading of the bill, I don't know what the lobbyist groups are behind it, but reading from the bill, it is very much from the idea of protecting renters of short-term rentals.
or the renters. So may or may not address the issues we're looking at.
But it does speak specifically to if a municipality is going to allow short-term rentals to be operated, that they are to adopt regulations for the operation of short-term rentals.
So right now, Jake, we don't allow Airbnbs or short-term rentals. And that'll help people that can rent homes and families can have their long-term rental.
When you say we don't allow, we do and we don't,
So we've been operating,
Well,
yeah, we've been operating under the idea that this has been complaint-based enforcement. So NIT and our Neighborhood Preservation Unit hasn't been going out actively looking to investigate cases for short-term rental violations. But as complaints have come into the Neighborhood Preservation Team, they've started opening up cases and doing those investigations. We've been operating as a complaint-based system.
And do we stop people saying you can no longer have short-term rentals?
So
Is
that
that
would
your
be,
position of
yes,
the law, but we haven't done that, correct?
we've started doing that.
And then they can rent the home instead of
Short-term.
short-term, which now you'd have more housing for people to rent
Right.
instead of.
Right, and their theory is I wouldn't get as much money as renting it to a frat house for 3 nights, right?
Right.
Than renting it to a family, right? So that's their motivation for doing it.
But we kind of have to, I mean, as a city, we should have a format for it, because otherwise some random person shows up to buy a house, they think they're gonna do short-term rentals. They figure out they can't. There needs to be something defining how this all works.
Mayor, that's exactly where I was going to go, is there needs to be a balance between individual property rights as well as maintaining the nature of a neighborhood. So we need to figure out what that balance is and how to address that tension.
But I think it all comes down to they want to make more money, they can rent it, not disallowing that, so. As Tom said, it's just money. It's, I wanna make as much as possible, and, you know, in reality, if it's a single family neighborhood, it's just stay single family and they can rent the family. That might be,
But you do have people who live upstairs and rent their basement.
But not night by night, for a month.
And that's really the policy that the council would need to set, is where do we wanna go on this? And I'm happy to draft a set of regulations, but at the end of the day, it is ultimately the policy of the council to either adopt or not adopt.
maybe that's a retreat subject.
We also have, you know, I think this is something you wanna open up the community, because you're gonna get more people than just the 7 of us are views.
I've already gotten emails on this.
No, I have,
Pro or con?
it's mostly people who are concerned their short-term rentals are going away. That's what I'm getting emails.
Yeah, I'm hearing more from that as well.
Yeah.
Jess, you researched this a bit, do you have any?
Yeah, there is a bill in the committee, the fact that it's been released in the committee, they're trying to get a feel for. I didn't see the task review that was introduced, which is a very good sign that it's going to be considered on the House, the Senate, the proper committees. So regulatory just requires a permit. If you go to Zillow and look at a house in some of the counties that permit, like St. George, and do the search for nightly, it will tell you what houses with nightly rentals. And it's not required to do that, but it sure helps if you're looking for a house to know if you're buying a house that you can do nightly rentals. Washington County has a pretty aggressive permitting process. I noticed that in Hurricane, did I say that right? There was a developer that went in the neighborhood, had nightly rentals, and a couple hundred people showed up at city council to that. And it was not in my neighborhood, I think that. So it will be a hot topic for the council, just to let you know ahead. It's not like the school district, but it will be.
I mean, it sounds like, we've got this bill going through, we don't know which side's pushing it, we don't know where it's going, we don't know if we like it, or we don't. So, we don't know if they're gonna apply it over the top of us, or we just don't know. So, we should be tracking that bill, and at the same time we're tracking that bill, we should know where we want to go. Right, and I think it's exactly what you say, we want to not disrupt our normal family neighborhoods. These short-term rentals should just be like another normal situation, to the extent they're not, that should be a problem. And maybe we come up with some clear ideas on it, so it sounds like we need to keep moving forward while at the same time. I don't think we wanna just wait till the end of the legislative session to say what happened to us. We want to be pretty actively involved in this.
Yeah, and I mean, one way to be proactive is if you have some strong feelings on what you'd like to see happen with short-term rentals is we could engage with our lobbyists, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, to maybe get them to put provisions in there that we want to see have happen, or take out things that we don't like. So, you know, we could actually have a voice in what happens with that legislation, so.
That's a great point.
But the legislation actually just requires a city, as Jake said, that does permit short-term rentals. It requires a permitting process, so I don't think they're requiring specifics in the permitting process, but probably there's definitions that the city would have to come up with. A short-term rental is a rental not less than 30 days, or some definitional. There probably with the fire department, there's probably going to be some inspections, I would assume, in your code that will happen frequently, since, you know, it's a safety issue for people that come in. So those are some of the issues that I think that the city will look at. But I do think we have some pretty good code out there, regulations out there in the state that we can look at.
Well, and I like that, get the league involved, because things can just change on a dime, right? That's what the legislature.
Sometimes a bill can start out doing one thing and it can morph pretty substantially,
Yeah.
so
So we should be present,
we have,
that's what you're saying.
so like I said, either to add or subtract to what's being proposed right now. Yeah, we
So
definitely
couple
be
that with
involved.
what Jesse's saying about being proactive on our own ordinance.
And, you know, not only the league, but I think Jesse is kind of acting as our voice to some extent on the legislation, and I think he could play, I mean, sorry, Jesse, I don't mean to give you an assignment here, but he certainly could play
But I
a
think
role.
that's what he's doing.
Yeah, he could play a role in talking to legislators up there about what our interests or our desires might be as to short-term rentals.
I think that would be wise.
So, Mayor, just a suggestion, if Jesse's up there for all the legislative things going on, it's probably a good idea for him to be reporting back, not just every city council meeting, but there might be things that, you know, I'll pick on Brady since he's our friend. You know, Brady Brammer might be reporting that we might have a connection with Brady if we knew that this happened yesterday and Brady was involved, you know, we could be involved with that, you know, like we talked about too, but if Jesse's reporting that this kind of took a turn the other direction, it'd be good if we knew that, oh, Kevin Stratton's involved with that, or so, people that we know, before it goes down that road.
And also get a meeting with our legislators like we had before. We had a Zoom before, but maybe have them come in and, you know,
Yeah, can we set that up before the session
that
starts?
was very beneficial.
That helped a lot.
But I think Jesse figuring out a way that Jesse's reporting to us what's happening on an ongoing basis, so we know, oh, this is something coming up tomorrow, he's
I
gonna.
mean, he can do a recap daily, because he's up there every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be, I don't know if that's a lot, too much.
No, I'm up there, it's difficult because there's several hearings going on at the same time. And, you know, quite frankly, if I want the bill passed, the less I say about it, the better chance I have. And so some of the times you see the bill when it's actually being voted on, just barely, very little debate on it. And so it's really difficult to make a change in the back room, because it's been done in the back room. I don't know how else to say that. The way the legislature works.
All right, so we're gonna have to push forward, so going forward, I mean, you'll keep going down the path you're going down. Does anyone have a different paradigm of what they want these short-term rentals, what 5,000 what we talked about?
I just think that, however, so they're not complaint based, so we control, you know, balance the property rights with the ability to limit complaints.
Just have them run it.
Just,
normal.
you know, respectful of the neighbors.
See,
It is a fine line.
Probably impossible to hit, but we're trying to get closer to it.
Cause when I was campaigning, I knocked on a neighbor's door and I said, anyway, the house next door to them was a big home that had been rented out, kind of like the goat house, and they had several times complaints. And the owner of the home didn't care at all, similar to the goat house thing. So we've gotta figure out how to keep, you know, I don't know how you legislate kindness, but, and respect, but try to frame it in a way that protects property rights on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, I think you just have a proactive process, right? I mean, there's a complaint, they go to the city, they fill out the complaint, that complaint gets investigated, gets reported back, there's just gotta be a set process based on whatever the legislation is that we pass, so. Okay, so you'll work forward, Jesse, we'll work, you guys work together. Sounds good. Thank you, Jake. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's move on to item number 2. Just an update on the traffic tiger team. Chris?
Chris. Come on board, come on.
We do our work with
kind of the much, yeah, cover it up.
Eye of the tiger, did you say, Brian?
He did.
Okay. Well,
I don't know, it's my.
Taking off his coat.
No, is there an acronym here, Chris, or was this just an animal that you admired?
no, this is, we'll often use the word tiger team for like an ad hoc team that
You're just
studies
pouncing
an
on it?
issue.
Okay.
Yeah. What you said?
Pouncing on it.
Yeah, we're pouncing on it, yeah. We have the eye of the tiger, if you will. Got the lyrics if you'd like to read them. Or whatever.
We want you to sing them.
Sam likes this, so we follow the tiger.
Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, yeah, this is Stallone in Rocky 3, here's the lyrics. And I don't know, we just like the tiger team kind of concept, because I feel like we are attacking issues and coming up with some good results. And the traffic tiger team was developed about 18 months ago. And in an attempt to, actually it wasn't that long ago, but we've been receiving requests regularly, or it seems like an increased number of requests over the last 18 months. Mostly by good stuff. So we decided, we'll get into those details in a minute.
Chris, if you don't mind, I'd love to emphasize here, this because of the increases in requests on traffic-related concerns around the city, we wanted to create a multidisciplinary team that addresses these kinds of issues timely, and even hopefully starts to become proactive in anticipating issues that are traffic related around the city. So if calling it the Tiger Team gets people excited and into it and energetic about something like local high school,
We're gonna probably make some jackets like that. I'll get into some more detail here in just a sec. So multidisciplinary, so representation from the city manager's office, the public works department, engineering division and development services, the planning division and development services. Is it not working?
This works, there's gonna be a
Oh,
slideshow.
thank you. Planning, and then also police. So it's multidisciplinary, and every, I think, area and group basically looks at the same issue, maybe from a slightly different nuanced perspective to help bring the best holistic kind of solution, I think, to the issue at hand, whether it has to do with legal efforts or efforts to change how traffic flows, or to influence traffic patterns or speeds, traffic calming, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, and so on. We all have different areas of expertise. So these are the names of those that are a part of that, this group. There's not really an official invitation of sorts that went out to this group, but we've identified these different departments, and in the different areas are different colors. So the city manager's office is represented by Brent and Ryan. They were both in our meeting today. We meet every 2 weeks to review new inputs and requests and challenges that have been identified by a variety of people. It could be council members, it could be citizens, public agencies, internal staff even. So the blue group consists of the police department, which is led by our chief, Josh Adams. BJ Robinson has been on these calls and part of this committee, as well as Lieutenant Pereskiva and Jeremy Jameson. There's been some restructuring in the department. I don't know if I have the titles all exactly right. Are these correct? Okay, good. And then Kara Lee Tracy is the newest addition to this. She is also a police lieutenant, I believe, as well. And so, although not all of those listed here are actively involved in this, they all have been at some point or another. And those that are underlined are those that are typically involved on an every 2-week basis. So I'm involved as the public works director. Tyler Pay is my assistant public works director, who is over our traffic operations division that is headed up by Taylor Forbush. Then we have the engineering side of things with Sam Kelly in the back,
who is our city engineer, and John Boney is our recently hired transportation engineer. And then Jason Bench is where here he's our city planner. And so we're looking at things from really a nice overall comprehensive holistic perspective, from a planning perspective, from a transportation and engineering perspective, to how things operate in the field perspective, to enforcement, and then and maybe more kind of a political aspect and considering the requests that are being made. And so we feel like this is a really good group. We've received 18 months worth of requests and data that I'm gonna present to you tonight. And just, I'll just give you an overview. So over those 18 months, we've had 54 submittals or cases that have come in through either through 311 through our help center, or from staff internally as we've contemplated different issues. We've added cases. It could be from the city council has submitted cases. I'll give you those breakdowns at the end. 29 of those cases that have been submitted over the last 18 months have been resolved. And here's the breakdown. The city council has submitted 30%, of which Dave is about 90% of that.
Just love those stop signs.
I'll say Dave and Lene, but that's great. Mayor, Dave and Lene.
I like painting on the road.
Jeff Lamson as well. So four of the council members have.
We have 100,000 public and they've done half of them, and 7 on the city council, and we've done 30% of them. Just trying to get those numbers.
Good stats.
Of the public, of those that are submitted, so 50% are from the public. They may be citizens or residents of Orem, or they may be from an adjacent community, maybe Linden, Provo, Vineyard. And then staff is about 10%. Like I said, we'll bring up areas that we feel like we need to address, and we'll add them to this, and we'll include them in our bi-weekly discussions. Then we might have requests that come from the school district or from Linden City staff or Provo City staff or council. This is generally about the breakdown there. So 54% is what we're looking at. 25 of those are active, 29
Was that
are
54% or 54 call?
I'm sorry,
That should have been 54, the number 54. That's what you had said earlier.
54 cases. You can skip this one. That's a faux pas there. Then 25 are active, 29 are closed. And then so of that 46% are still active. So here's the categorical breakdown. We've basically been classifying each one of these cases in these following categories. Some kind of bleed over, maybe a couple of the categories. We tried to put them in as best we could to kind of give you a feel, and for our tracking purposes, to get a feel of where are the highest demands or the highest number of requests coming. And overwhelmingly, I think the number is at pedestrian crossings. There's 16 out of the 54 cases are coming in are pedestrian crossings. We've resolved 8 of those 16. They might be a mid-block crossing, it might be a crossing at an intersection. Most of these are related to schools, but not all. One request we had recently came in to look at a mid-block crossing at 400 North and 600 West, which we are currently studying.
Now, may I ask, so
Yes.
we have had a couple of residents come to city council,
Uh-huh.
more than a couple, but so when you hear that, you're putting that on this list, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They're on the list, and if they're coming in to a meeting like that, then we'll put them down as public. So I think there's one reference, I think his name is Trevor Macedone, came in recently in October to a city council meeting requesting, he submitted a formal request, first one we received in accordance with our transportation guidelines, our transportation master plan for traffic calming. They've done everything correctly. We've since gone and studied that particular case and determined that the request, while they might feel is they need to put in some calming there, the volumes are very low and the speeds are very low. So the 85th percentile speed on that particular corridor is 26 miles an hour, 85th percentile. 85 out of 100 cars are going 26 or lower. And then there's only, Sam, remember how many cars were on that? It was just a couple hundred cars.
Yeah.
And that's why it's kind of skewed, I guess, right? It's because you don't have a big sample.
No, we studied it. That's.
No, I mean, that's why you're not having that many violations, is because you just have Lot of law abiders there, you know.
Well, in fact, I was shocked to see how low it was. I was curious because that particular request was from 400 north to 800 north on 6th West. What we're communicating back to Mr. Macedon and others that have made calls and requests is that we will put this, keep this on our list of things to track in the future. When a signal goes in at 6th West on 800 north, then we'll reevaluate that. We anticipate that the volumes there will then increase, perhaps the speeds will increase as well. So
Is that, on 8 north, that's quite a few lights right in a row. I mean,
8th north and 6th west, that signal is warranted, I believe, Sam, John, is that correct? Yes. So,
hopefully we have it in unison, because I'm back in traffic.
typically it'll help with coordination and to make a smoother traffic flow. That's what we anticipate there to keep the platoons together from each signal to the next. But that is a UDOT intersection and it's controlled by UDOT and they've done studies on that. I don't know the time frame on that, Sam, do you know when they're anticipating that going in?
So, no, currently there's a redevelopment happening with Orchard to Bogus. Hospital is looking to redevelop that area, put in a 3-story professional office building, in the surgical center. So likely it'll happen probably in the next couple of years, we'll have a signal there.
Okay. Again, we'll reach out to that community and reevaluate the street section. We're keeping a history of all of these. We're not deleting them when we're completing them. We're putting them on a separate location to continue to evaluate or to have a history of the evaluations and then to compare. So traffic calming is 50% completed. So 10 requests have come in for that. Traffic calming, you might ask, what is that? 4, it is if there's, for example, on 6th West between 4th and 8th North, they felt like the speeds were high, that we needed to do something physically there to calm the traffic and slow it down, to make it safer. Traffic safety, it might include things where maybe cars are parked outside of the park area and they're in the travel lane. Are there a variety of other safety issues that need to be addressed?
Hey, can I ask you a question about that? When you look at these streets, do you take into account streets that have a lot of street parking, curb parking? Because to me that even when people are going 25 or 30, that might be too fast if you've got only really one lane and you can't see if there are kids on the sidewalk or something.
Yeah, that particular street I think is 34 feet of asphalt. It's a standard local street cross section. I think parking is available on both sides. When I drove up and down it, when I looked at it specifically, I didn't notice
You didn't notice
a
any
large
additional?
amount of cars parked. I didn't see any cars driving on it, quite frankly, when I was there even, so. But that was a simple snapshot of time.
And that's 600 West by Warren Junior High, correct?
Correct, yeah,
So that could be based on the time of day also.
sure,
Okay.
yeah. Again, there were only a couple hundred cars a day. Local streets will have up to about maybe 1,500 cars a day on them. And that had just a couple hundred.
But the light is warranted there because of the commercial across the street?
The light is warranted, I don't know what the warrants were for that particular one. I'm assuming volume and then the inability for cars to turn left or right on 6th West. As you get closer to 8th North, I think the volumes increase quite a bit there at that location. In conjunction with the school, people coming and going and dropping off kids and picking up children. So. But we've had several requests come in regarding just basic traffic movement and making traffic movement more efficient in certain areas. Bike lanes, bike routes, multi-use paths, striping on streets. Street lighting, we've had three of those. Those have all been resolved quickly, and then parking has all been resolved as well. We've had some recent ones regarding parking and cul-de-sacs. All of those have been resolved. So with that, I'd like to share with you this document that we have here. This is our Traffic Tiger Team document. It has, I don't know, can you read that? Maybe I'll blow it up a little bit just so you can see. The headings are just ID. We have in the order that they've been received, we put an identifier on them. If there's a specific requester, we'll identify who that is. Now let's look at this one. In this case, Lene submitted a request. it's been taking a long time to get resolved on this particular one. This was in conjunction with Bonneville Elementary School regarding a pedestrian crossing at 12th West and about 1400 North. We have this all identified. When it resolved, we check the checkbox. We've all been working on this together as a team. We have links in there that will show you, I will bring up the location of the area that's been studied or is in the process of being studied. So we're looking at a particular signal at this location. It would be like a hawk signal, something similar to that if it's not a hawk signal. It'd be generally located in this location. I think actually we're looking at it right about here. We do have a set of plans that are completed that are probably 90% completed, and then we're gonna be meeting with the Bonneville Community Council in January. And so that's an example. These types of crossings generally take quite a while to study and then also to meet with the community and so forth. However, we're identifying all of these, we're tracking all of them. We have notes on each one of these. We've identified areas and locations where we need to perform studies. And so we're investing in our system right now to obtain more data and do some data collection so we can make informed decisions and provide best solutions based on our collective wisdom and feedback and professional expertise that we have.
Well, the fun thing about this one is I was attending the school community council meeting, just as kind of some outreach from the council with the schools. And it was brought up during that meeting and they asked for that assistance. So I appreciate your work on this because I know these things do take time.
Yeah.
But they did have concerns with student safety and the safe walking route. Took the kids the other direction up to 1600 North to cross at that light and then walking back in. So we definitely needed a solution there.
Yeah.
So thanks.
We feel like that's probably going to be happening.
So on the 1600 North and 400 East, back in the day, we had flags that were at the.
Yeah, we did.
They're not there anymore.
They're not there anymore?
No. I drove by there, they're all gone. So we need to look at that and,
You didn't take them, right?
no, check my trunk.
I don't think
Well,
Dave's
add
not
to the list
talking.
there, but then your percentage of, direction.
Well, I just
Yeah.
noticed because,
There you go.
because that's where the kid got hit. So that's we put the
Yeah,
flags
right.
and they're
I
all
know
gone
that.
now, so.
They are not there. Yeah, I drove the other day and
I looked at it.
that's a good point. I'll,
So you can give me another one there.
I'll have another one. So this is how you do it. I'll stop there because I know your time is precious, so.
But if I can just emphasize, I think this has been a great example that the sum is greater than its parts. And it's great evidence that shows that, increased communication and collaboration gets things done quicker and helps us get to a better solution than we otherwise would. So I really appreciate Chris's, Brian's, Josh's, Jason's, Sam and John's leadership in the center in really engaging on it, coming up with detailed, real, achievable results, because this is of high concern and interest to our residents.
I'll just second that as far as it's, this type of project really shows what Orem's all about. In other words, the normal way would be somebody has an issue, they complain, they try and track the person down. That person has to talk to somebody else, that person has to talk to somebody else, eventually you figure out the place, but you don't have a way of prioritizing it. This brings it all together and makes it so when we have issues, they can be prioritized pretty instantly and then dealt with. So I think that's a great example of what Orem's doing great.
Thank you. I added it, Dave, it's right there. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. Make the old flags.
Okay, let's run through the agenda real quick here. Got a pretty full agenda for the last one of the year. Got. Is there anyone that needs to do a city council report? I don't remember the name on
Has
there.
to be in that pass.
Okay. All right, meeting's called to order at 6 p.m. Invocation is by Julie Allen. Who invited Julie Allen? Oh, you did? Oh, they did,
Yes, I'm sorry, the prayer pledge, is that what you're talking about?
yes. So would you like to just introduce something?
Yes, so Julie is one of the BYU professors that has been instrumental in helping us move forward the Women's and Children's Memorial Park, so.
Okay, but I'll have you introduce her.
Okay, and also Lon Bowen, who is in the pledge, she's on our Historic Preservation Commission. So that's the theme for our resolution tonight.
Okay, great, so if you have to, just give them a shout out. And then we've got item number 6, 6.1, introduction of public safety peer support dogs.
Yeah, Rachel will be presenting. I think she was.
Rachel will be.
She'll
Rachel.
introduce and then turn some time over to Trevor McGinty, who's got something prepared.
So should I just introduce Rachel and
Yeah.
she'll take it from there? Okay, and we've got 6.2 highlights of Lights On, our huge success, that was awesome. And item 6.3, farewell remarks from council members Debbie LeRae and Terry Peterson.
You wanna time us in 3 minutes, we can?
That would be funny. Yeah, that would be really funny. Then item 7, we've got personal appearances. Now, personal appearances can be an issue with our public hearing 9.5. So should I just go and attempt to separate
Yeah.
those out?
You know, Mary, you did such a good job with the school district having, you know, not everyone say the same thing, kind of having some sort of like leader. I don't know if you wanna do similar.
In the public hearing
In
section.
the public hearing section of 9.5. I just know that we're gonna get a lot of opposition, but if they say the same thing over and over, I don't know.
Right,
I thought it was good in this school district, we have more spokes for people. I don't know, what do you think?
oh, I think that's great, I mean, we wanna hear from everyone, but we want to simplify and make it meaningful input, so.
Yeah. And we don't want them here all night.
So, let's see, we've got our consent items, approval of minutes, approval of 2024 city council meeting schedule. Announcing Mayor Pro Tem switch.
That's Tom.
Dave Spencer.
Dave Spencer wanted it for a year.
I'm sure he did.
He asked me if I'd give up my 6 months, I said yes.
Appointment Beautification Advisory Committee, Kristen Bascom,
Kirsten,
Kirsten,
that's it's
It's
spelling,
Kirsten,
yeah.
not Kristen. Okay, and then, so the Rex Commission, we've got Danny Miller.
He's been a mainstay on that he's been good on that, Danny, with his
Yeah.
years as a
Then
coach.
we need to replace Skip, we're working on
And then we've got a reappointment to CDBG, Ashley Gill and
We skipped the
Eileen
library.
So that one's mine. Oh, the library, both of those two are mine. The CDBG is a reappointment and Nancy Schultz is, I think she's going to be here. So I'll just introduce her if that's okay for a quick minute.
Okay,
The others are just reappointments. I don't think they're coming. So,
so you wanna introduce Nancy Schultz?
yeah,
And then, did you also say Ashley Gill? and
no, I talked to them and neither one of them will be here, so, but they are just gonna be reappointments.
Okay, so mainly, the library advisory commission?
Yeah. And Bryce, is Bryce here?
Yeah.
Okay, she's gonna talk to you after.
Does anyone know if any of these other people are gonna be here?
it. I don't know if Kirsten's gonna be, if she is, I'll, I don't.
Let me know if anyone else is gonna be here, so. I can have them stand up. Then we've got item 9, scheduled items. We've got item 9.1, independent financial audit, with Brandon, we'll go through that. Item 9.2, the new Form C.
Tell them even though they're charging twice as much, we don't need twice as long on their presentation.
I can make a promise on my part, I don't know what I can do about the law.
So we can turn them off.
Our audit was pretty good, well, it's excellent actually, so it should be a quick presentation. Item 9.3, the historical memorial. So 9.2, 9.3 are both presentations by Jake Summers. 9.4, public hearing on the rezone Okay, so that's a public hearing. Are we voting on that tonight?
Yes, I think so.
So we're gonna go through the public hearing and then we'll vote.
That's just taking an old grandfathered clause and allowing it now legally, right? So they can increase the mental health.
Okay.
I don't assume you got any negative pushback from the neighbors.
Actually, the neighbors are in favor.
Yeah, they worked with the developer very closely and the developer did what they wanted, so.
Good.
It should work. Item 9.5, our public hearing on the settlement agreement with Right Development Group. Again, that'll be a public hearing on the vote. Item 10, communication items, 11, city manager information items. And adjourn.
Mr. Lampson is on remotely right now, he will be there.
So Mayor, this suggestion, somewhere in here, if it's going really long, we might want a big bathroom bridge between 94 and 95.
If we don't, we'll end quicker.
Test, test.
You do public relations. Your vote.
What do you want to say? Jeff Lamson, can you hear us, Jeff?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Pete.
Take a seat. We're gonna stand up together and give you guys
When you say your first syllable, I started right there.
We don't want to stay very long. We're coming to thank them.
Right there, I'm sure you can just have her arrest, I give her the.
Thank you so much.
You wanna be very. Yeah. 2 days ago. Yeah. I think we have one. You do? So we'll have 10 days off, and then we'll see each other. I think, to be honest, I think you're doing a great job there. That means a lot. It means a lot to me too. It's big shoes to fill. Well, you're open-minded and you have good ideas. You're approachable, you don't shut anyone down, you hear all of our ideas. You're what, how many generations deep? I've been, my great grandfather immigrated here from Sweden. We're gonna be talking about the Swedes here. Are we? Tonight? These people behind you love the Swedes too. Means they're, one's a Swedish for Swedish. Oh. They're gonna be speaking about what? You know, there's 2 pioneer people. There's anything we can do to maintain our history in Orem is good. We need to do that. Well, there is, but we just tore it all down, you know? And now it's time to make things better. Yeah, but how do you build back something? That's the buildings are done. You can at least, yeah, we should. That's kind of like what we're working on next. We'll probably big project for us in 2024. Okay. Well, we're the.
We'd like to welcome everyone here tonight and call this meeting to order. We've got a pretty full meeting tonight for the last one of the year. We'll start out with an invocation followed by a pledge. And Lene, if you'd like to introduce the people that you asked to do that.
Yes, I will. I'd like to welcome, let's see, I can't remember what order we did, who we're having do what. Lon Bowen is going to give our pledge, and Lon is on our Historic Preservation Commission. And I invited him and the Julie Allen, who is doing our prayer. She's one of the BYU professors that has helped move forward our resolution that we're voting on tonight for the Women's and Children's Memorial. So I wanted to invite these two individuals because they will be working on this project that we're going to have in the future that I'm very excited about. So Lon, for the, oh, what's that?
Julie.
Oh, Lon, let's have Julie go first with the, do you want to do?
What's that?
So let's have Julie do the prayer first, and then we'll have you do the pledge. She's right behind you. Sit right here on that chair. Thank you. Yep.
The prayer first.
We're going to do her, she'll announce the prayer or offer the prayer first, and then we'll have you do the pledge. Sorry for, that's on me, the miscommunication. Thank you, Julie.
Dear Lord, we're grateful for the chance to gather together tonight, grateful for the chance to govern ourselves, and we pray for thy wisdom and compassion as we listen to our elected lawmakers and offer our insights into how the city can be the most welcoming and stable and safe place for all of our families. We ask you to please bless everyone here tonight with a spirit of calmness and peace and love for their fellow men. And we ask you to please help us to be able to reach decisions through the council that will benefit all the citizens of this area. And we ask these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Will the audience please rise?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both for that. We'll move to item number 6.1. And this will be a presentation about our public safety peer support dogs. And Rachel Thomas will come up and start this.
Hello, hello, council members, Orem residents and guests. My name is Rachel Thomas. I'm a fire service specialist, and I'm currently serving under Chief Myers, handling everything operational in the fire department. I am truly honored to be here to present a facet of public safety that is an especial passion of mine. So it is the handlers and dogs of both the fire and police department who comprise our canine support teams. Each of these dogs has their own unique personalities and strengths. What's really impressive is that their handlers give of their time, their resources, and even their own homes to shape and mold them into incredible assets to our firefighters, policemen, and to the victims that we rush to aid. I personally have witnessed the impact the dog's training and presence in general lends to morale, lowered anxiety, and connection just within our department. And I can't imagine what it does outside of it. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Captain Trevor McGinty up first. Unfortunately, his dog Rocky is unable to make it. He's under the weather today. Following him will be firefighter Mike Hickman with his dog named Duke. Following him is firefighter Matt Cower with his dog named Torch. If you guys want to come up to the front. And then following him is our victims advocate, Isa Stevens, and her sweet pup, Hoku. Like I said, we are truly honored to be able to present them to you today. They are the culmination of lots and lots of hours of service. I'd like to turn some time over to our Captain Trevor McGinty. He's our peer support coordinator and actually our very first handler on the fire department. And then to our victims advocate, Isa Stevens. Both will present briefly on aspects of training and impacts they've seen their dogs have. Captain McGinty.
All right, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I took some notes, so I try and hit all of the important things. Quite a few years ago, I think it's been about 5 years ago, I started the peer support program here in Orem. It's been a special passion of mine because one of my first paramedic partners that I had and one that trained me committed suicide. And so the peer support team has been a huge passion of mine because I don't want that to happen to anybody else that I work with. And whether it happens or not, there's things that we feel here in our job as police officers and firefighters that stress us out, and it gets to a point where it's too much. And so the peer support team is there for us to have a voice to hear and a voice to talk to, somebody to talk to and listen. And that's what the peer support team is. It's a group of currently 11 people on the fire department that are trained, specially trained. And those 11 members are able to be on call at any hour, any day for anybody in the department. If somebody has a stressful call, no matter what it is, they're able to call somebody on that team and have a listening ear, and then also be provided with resources if needed. After a couple of years of being the peer support team coordinator, I decided to bring on dogs to the program. We had a family dog, and I have a son that has some mental health concerns that the dog was helping with. So I wrote it's called an SBAR to the chief, and just kind of gave him the concerns and the reasoning for it. I thought that the dogs would be a good addition to our program and help the firefighters and as well as our patients. I think we're the only department in the state that has the approval from the Utah State Bureau of EMS to actually have dogs in the back of the ambulance with us with our patients. I've had my dog with me a couple of times on a couple of occasions. One was a pediatric patient. She had some mental health issues, and we had to transport her all the way to Ogden Regional Hospital for further care. And Rocky was able to kind of huddle up and sit on the stretcher next to her and provide support throughout that long transport all the way up to Ogden. Another call that we went on was just a basic traffic accident, but the female that was involved in the accident was having a panic attack because of what had gone on. And I didn't know what was going on or what was happening on the scene prior to us arriving in the engine, but I pulled Rocky out of the engine and he went straight up to the girl that was involved in the accident that was having a panic attack, and it calmed her down within about 30 seconds. And so the dogs have been a huge asset for us on scene, but mainly the reason why that we have them is for our own firefighters, for our own members of our department. They provide that support with the stressors that we have in life. And the guys are able to request the dogs to come to the station at any time. They're able to request them for any of our stress debriefings that we do, whether it's a state critical incident stress debriefing or just something that we're doing at the station in general. So my dog Rocky, who unfortunately has chronic ear infections and couldn't be here tonight, and Duke went through the program together. We finished 2 years ago. The program is through Four Paws for Patriots, which is located in Ogden. And the reason why I chose that program is because it's actually free if you are a firefighter, police officer, veteran, or current military. It allows you to become the handler of your own dog and also allows your dog to get about $20,000 worth of training. And it's a year-long program. So we'd travel up to Ogden every Friday for a year to do the training, and then everything else had to be practiced on our own at home or at the station, wherever we were at. It required a lot of taking the dog to the grocery store when I went grocery shopping, taking him to school when I dropped my kids off at school, just to get a lot of different access. And I know that these guys are doing a lot of that as well. Torch, Matt's dog, is currently in the program. He just finished the first module and will be moving on to the second in January. And we're very thankful to Christina and Todd, which are here with us tonight. They actually donated Torch to the fire department for this reason. And then last of all, just like to thank you as the city and Chief Sanderson as our representative for the department for being supportive of this program and providing us with travel and coverage and everything that we've needed to make this program work and the training happen. That's all I have. So I think it's Thank
So
you.
Dave and I got to see Torch last night. We went to visit your station and it was so fun. Thank you for having this program. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
And I'll turn some time over to Aza. She's got a little bit more information on her portion of the program.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isa Stevens. I am one of the victim advocates with Orem Police Department. This here is Hoku. She's our 5-month-old fox red Labrador. She's in training right now, and she has the best job in the world. Her job is to be loved and petted on. She met Torch yesterday, and she loves Torch. So, Hoku, here. Down. Down. So she's currently undergoing a psychiatric service dog training with Dog Training Elite. We've had some donors who have generously given to the program. So we, as a police department, we're not paying for anything except for our police department has generously offered to pay for any kind of veterinary expenses. She will be, after the program, she'll be able to aid victims of crime. A lot of victims of crime, they have symptoms of depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And so she's currently undergoing a training right now to help out with that. She's doing super well. She's going through public access training next week, and she's only 5 months old, which is super incredible. We've had a few success stories. When I'm inside my room doing protective orders with victims of crime, we have teenagers that come in, sisters, moms, whole families. When they see her, it's intimidating coming to the police department, but with Hoku there, they kind of have a smile on their face, and they leave with a smile, which is our goal with having Hoku. We're just thankful for this opportunity. Our police department, Chief Adams, was on board right away, and we're just grateful that we were able to implement her into our program.
Any other questions or anything else from you, council? All right.
No, we appreciate the fire and the police and for what you do for the citizens of Orem, and you keep us safe. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. It's good to know. Next up, we've got item 6.2, the highlights of Lights On. And Karina and Pete are going to tell us about that. Actually, Bryce.
Mayor, City Council, thank you for providing us just a couple of minutes today. We wanted to share a quick report on our Lights On event that happened last week. Mayor, you sort of stole our thunder with your mayor's message this month. We love to see that. And we really wanted to celebrate a lot of the same message. We were just so pleased with the community support and the experience it's made for a lot of our residents to come here by City Center Park and enjoy it. And so Karina has just a little bit of information that we wanted to share with y'all today about how it went and a recap of what is still left to come if you haven't had a chance to make it over to the park yet.
Right? No, mine doesn't plug in. Sorry, I should have figured this out.
It's all good. Take your time.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see if that pulls up. Okay. All right, we have just a video highlight that we wanted to show everyone. Let's see if that sounds. Of course, that's not going. Pete.
Once again.
Sorry, everyone. Give me 1 second. Okay.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. There you go. Take a look at the 5 and 10. It's glistening once again. Candy canes and silver lamps that glow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Toys in every store. But the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. A pair of hop-along boots and a pistol that chooses the wish of Barney and Glenn. God's little talking will go for a walk is the hope of Janice and Jen. Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again. It's to look like Christmas. Everywhere there's a tree in the Grand Hotel, one in the park as well. It's the sturdy kind that doesn't mind the snow. Soon the bells will start, and the thing that will make you look. It's the carol that you sing right with me.
Okay. Hey, thank you. So this was the 12th annual Lights On ceremony, and this wouldn't be possible without the help of so many individuals and sponsors. And I'd like to extend my sincerest thanks to all of the staff who worked tirelessly to make this event the best it's ever been. And it was truly a hallmark holiday experience that every family in Orem could enjoy. I'd like to express my gratitude to the Sierra for the exceptional stage sound that they provided and for all the remarkable performances that we had. Throughout the night, we were treated to numerous captivating performances that truly enhanced the holiday atmosphere. Another huge thank you to Trio and Walker Sanderson for the generous donations for providing free hot cocoa and donuts to the community. We were also able to have Rondu Booth, who were able to elevate our event by providing instant prints of families taking photos with Santa and Mrs. Claus. We were able to get nearly 1,000 prints out to the residents of Orem. Sunset Farmer Market, we're able to get around 100 different holiday booths. This is a new tradition that will continue as we continue to host the holiday farmers market on Saturdays in the month of December. A new addition that we had this year was the Orem Express, which was already garnered immense popularity amongst the community and is set to continue to be a crowd favorite for upcoming future Orem City events. And then lastly, just a huge thank you to Mayor and Council for your continuous support for these events and your continuous attendance. I truly think you guys make it a magical time just as well. And it's been so fun to be able to plan these events, and I can't wait for next year and what we can come up with.
Thank you, you two. No, that was an amazing event, and we've gotten a ton of feedback from the citizens as far as that it was amazing. Put it in perspective, usually we have 3 legs of fireworks, or not fireworks, but lights go off. This time we had 8, and I do know the city workers were working, putting in a ton of effort just to put it all together because it was kind of uncharted territory. And one final shout out is, this is a great example because there had been talk about the lights on being canceled because of the new city center. And instead of lights on being canceled, which was an option, Orem got the biggest Christmas party ever. So we're excited about that. Great job.
Can I have one question? You guys have an estimate of how many people attended? Is there a rough estimate?
Just under 3,000 people were able to come through on the initial Monday evening, and then both last Saturday and the next 2 Saturdays, there's still the holiday farmers market as well as the Orem Express. And so really we're hoping to be able to reach, 7,000-8,000 of our Orem residents over the course of the different events.
Wonderful, thanks.
Thank you. Great job. Next up, we've got item 6.3, and we're only going to do this once. We got farewell remarks from first Debbie LeRae and then Terry Peterson.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to the citizens over the last 8 years, and of course to the great city staff and my fellow council people. I really had 2 themes for my years. One was quality of life, especially for families. And then my background as an economic development director, economic development was really very important to me. Some of the things that were unique to what that'll be my marks moving forward are the James Christensen Park over at Sierra. That was my brainchild, and I'm very grateful that came to fruition. I fought for as many family dressing rooms we could have at the fitness center, and I believe we ended up with 19. That was very important to me, based on me being a grandma and how that's a great thing to help. I worked on saving the gym at Hillcrest Park, of course, the library hall, city hall, all of those things. Economic development. Before I started my new job, I bet I met, when I was in town, I went to every ribbon cutting I could if I was there. And there's nothing greater than watching someone's dream come true when they open a new business. And so I tried to make everyone I could, and I think I did. I did a lot with our Orem Alliance, helping with them, picking Business of the Year, things like that. I've enjoyed many committee assignments. Most notably, I was on Arts Council and Orem Fest, did a lot of that. And then been other various things, the natural resource, I've been on transportation, planning, many more, beautification. And then with the State Street Master Plan, it was now important for me to make sure that landscaping was part of that, making sure that we had good materials so that as we were redoing it, that those were important. So to me, they were quality of life and then economic development. So the things that I hopefully I'm known for is that I cared, that I came prepared, and that I am emphasize, once again, quality of life and economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And let me just mention, I should have mentioned this earlier, but Jeff Lamson is here in our meeting remotely. So Jeff will be voting with us later. Terry, would you like to say a few things?
Sure. No, it's been a great opportunity to serve in the city, and it's not it's we, because it is Debbie and I got to represent the citizens of Orem, and that's just a great honor. I need to start by just saying something about yesterday. The city had a little retirement party, which is kind of fun to have a retirement party when you only served for 4 years and you're getting a retirement party. But it was such a very touching experience that meant the world to me and to my family. And I thank Bren, I thank Tess, I thank the whole staff that put this together, and it really did mean a lot to me and my family. So thank you for your kind words and things that you said. The citizens of Orem, I thank you, because you put some trust in me 4 years ago, and I've tried to be loyal to those things I said I would do. And we live in a great city. Went to school, I grown up here and have great memories and great experiences of the citizens of Orem. The employees of Orem City are great people. The first responders, the fire department yesterday showed up in mass to the retirement party. And that means the world to me too, guys. Thank you. And you know, we show up occasionally on the city council, sit up here and say a few things. Those guys and women are 24/7, watching our backs, protecting us, taking care of us, and so grateful that we have a city with great first responders. Also our public works. I mean, now if I start naming different departments, I'll forget, finance, or I'll forget somebody else. But we have so many great departments in our city that take their jobs seriously, and we appreciate what you do. Also, I'll mention my fellow members on the city council. So, nothing happens unless we have at least 4 people agreeing to something. And it's been really an enjoyable experience to work with members of the city council. And as we try to, as I listen to their concerns, they listen to my concerns, we try to come up with some kind of consensus. So I'll just make a couple other comments. I decided to run 5 years ago for city council because the number one concern I had was the high density apartments in Orem City. I talked to a neighbor one time, or someone who was next to a high density apartment, and he said, "You know what, Terry? You don't know what it's like, but I will never see another sunset," because he's got a 5-story apartment complex across the street from his house. That bothered me. And as I knocked on doors and campaigned, that's the number one thing I heard was concern about high density apartments springing up all over our city. So I've been very grateful to be on the city council when we stopped the State Street Master Plan. State Street Master Plan would have added 10,000 apartments on State Street and the corridors surrounding State Street. That's apartments, that's not people. So if you add how many people are going to be in those apartments, that's like putting Vineyard on State Street. And I'm so grateful for my fellow members of the city council to say, no, enough's enough. And we stopped the State Street Master Plan. State Street, or the transportation plan, had streets being widened all over the city, 8th North, or not 8th North, 16th North, 8th East, take your pick. Overpasses over the freeway on 12th North, on 8th South. And again, I'm grateful for my fellow members of the city council to say, no, that's not Orem. So it's been very grateful and satisfying for me to be part of those decisions. Hillcrest Park, Debbie mentioned, that was an elementary school, that was a neighborhood school, and we have great neighborhood schools in our city. And I served on the school board for 6 years. And when I was on the school board, the superintendent at that time said, we support neighborhood schools. We don't take out neighborhood schools. I mean, that's part of your identity is where you went to school. I bet you, most of you in this room, if I ask you, name your elementary school teachers, you could do it. I think I can name all, but maybe my second grade teacher, I'm a little fuzzy on that. But I bet most of us could do that. Kindergarten through 6th grade, and you're nodding because I think most of you could. That's the impact those teachers had. So when Hillcrest Elementary, which is right across from the mall, when that was announced that was going to be closed, because the district has changed what they used to do. Now, instead of protecting neighborhood schools, they've been closing at least in Orem, they've been closing neighborhood schools, selling off the property. And I'm so grateful for the city council to say, no, no, no. Let's put a park in the southeast part of town. And I love Cat Stevens. None of you got to be old to know who Cat Stevens is, but his song was, where are the children going to play? If you take out the parks, and the problem is Hillcrest is a low-income minority school. So those kids don't have 3 cars at home and moms that are stay-at-home moms. They don't have that opportunity. You close their school and you're busing them across town. Now they have to catch a bus and there's no one there to take them to school. By the way, that's the same case with Sharon. That's the same case with Windsor. I mean, there's other schools that the district's closing too. That's another story. So I'm very grateful for the concern of the city council to say, no, the kids in that part of town will have a place to play. And it's going to be a beautiful park. And thank you, fellow members of the city council. So I've been grateful for the things that we've accomplished. I'm grateful for the concerns for children, because my big issue is the children. How do we protect our children from, they grow up way too fast. So let's have parks for them to play. Let's have safe places for them to go. I could keep going, but I'll quit. Other than I just want to say thank you for the opportunity that I've had to serve. And thank you for, listening to me, through these years as I ramble on different things, but I'm passionate. I'm passionate about our city. I'm passionate about our children. So one last statement, what will keep me up nights and make me worry after I leave the city council, which is in another couple of weeks? The same things I just mentioned. What if there's a push to reverse the State Street Master Plan? What if all of a sudden we have a city council now that wants to stick high density apartments back in our city? Okay, that's something that'll keep me up nights because the traffic, the burden on our fire, our police, our infrastructure, all those things are a concern. What else will keep me up nights is the children. Is no one, if you're a low income, or if you're a non-legal resident that lives in Orem, you don't have a voice. So if they're closing your school, there is no voice. So hopefully we'll continue to do our part as a city council to say, what can we do to protect children? We can't stop a school district closing schools or trying to sell it. But last thing, Mayor, and then I'll quit. The last thing that the city council did, though, was change the zoning on these school properties. So if the district decides they don't want to, by the way, we have more children going to school now than we ever had in the city. So it's not like we don't have children going to school, but they go to home schools, they go to charter schools, they go to private schools, they go to Provo School District. But the city council said, we've got to protect this property because when schools, if the district closes a school, we still need the schools. There still needs to be opportunities for children. So the zoning now protects that, so that'll stay schools. So the district can close a school, but the zoning doesn't change. So they can't stick a bunch of high density apartments on that property. It will stay school or school related kind of property. So again, I thank my city council. I'm grateful to have been part of all those things. And thank you for your indulgence as I rambled, but these things are important to me and I think they are to you. So thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Debbie, and thank you for your service and all the great work you do for Orem. We're going to move into personal appearances. And let me just say a couple things about that. So I've got this list, and I know usually when you do personal appearances, you've got to sign up before, which is the way it works, and then I get this list. But later on, one of the last things on the agenda is we're going to have a couple public hearings, but one of the public hearings will be about Hillcrest, not Hillcrest, but Meadow Gold property. And so anyway, if you're on this list where you signed in, you don't need to stay on this list if you're going to talk about Meadow Gold, because you'll have an opportunity to do that when we get to that part. So I'll just go through the names and call you up. But if you want to talk about Meadow Gold, it'd be best if you just hold that, just raise your hand and say I'm good, and then do that in the public hearing part. So let me just read this, and then this is just what we say when we do public appearances. And this will apply to later also. Time has been set aside for the public to express their ideas, concerns, and comments on items not scheduled as public hearings on the agenda. Those wishing to speak are encouraged to show respect for those who serve the city. Comments should focus on issues concerning the city. Those wishing to speak should have signed in before the beginning of the meeting, except for later when it's a public hearing. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. We'll start out first with Mike Christensen.
Engaging sandwich mode criticism in 3, 2, 1. I really appreciated that despite the previous administration not having a Christmas lighting ceremony either during COVID or while the new auditorium was being built, you current one recognized that even though there's a construction out in front here again, you could have it at the park instead with even more light trees. What a bright idea that was. And even though we miss having it right here at State Street, I love that we're now using the big pro stage for the performers. That and the trains and stuff make this so much more pro quality event that we should just keep having it out there instead of here on the patio indefinitely anyway. But where it wasn't so bright was the stage. The performers and speakers really need key lighting. The stage lights don't really work to brighten up their faces. We ought to have some lights on poles or something similar out front. Number 2, I like the spectacle of Santa Claus riding in on the Tiller Drive fire truck or one of the others, but this year I couldn't really see the truck until it parked at the senior center. And it was cool that he rode up to the stage from there on one of the trains. So I think it would bring back the loud excitement like we had on State Street if he would come barreling down Center Street with the lights blazing and siren blaring, and then either park with the seniors again or at one of the pavilion lots and then get on the train. Number 3, I wish you would advertise the actual start time as being the half-hour mark when the live music starts playing before the speaking, because otherwise it messes up the people who try coming a little early to get a good spot, but don't remember to come extremely early. So those of us in the less extreme group would still miss out on some of the music and getting a good spot. When you said 5:30 instead of 6 this year, I thought you fixed that, but you didn't. I got there a little after 5 with the stuff already started. So if you're starting before 6 now, but the first music's before even 5:30, then please advertise it in the future as starting at 5 o'clock. Then the medium early birds might try getting there at 4:30 instead of just 5 when the music's already starting. Thanks for waiting until after Thanksgiving. But I do have to say that this year's show was still so good that you really knocked it out of the park. Oh, actually, a little correction there. You knocked it into the park. Thanks for your time, and I wish you a happy Christmas and 123, 123 New Year.
Thank you. Kathy Minster. Okay, thank you. Charlene Lawrence. I've got Scott Swain, it says right development. Steve Assel.
Mayor, it's still Estelle, though. I'd like to say thank you to the city council. Thank you for the 2 retiring members. Thank you very much for your service. We'd also like to thank, we did watch the last meeting online for the first 15 minutes or so to watch short-term rentals and your decisions there. Thank you very much for considering us. We appreciate the city council. We appreciate the city attorney's office, Jake. Appreciate the neighborhood enforcement people. We've had a nightmare to go through that others people shouldn't have to go through with the short-term rental that was in our neighborhood. The court ruled in favor of us, and not only did they ban short-term rentals in our neighborhood, but they banned short-term rentals in the city of Orem in any residential neighborhood by law. And so that's a big handful for you guys to work with. And as to the judge's decision, and so I think that sets the precedence for many other neighborhoods to consider with their problematic areas of short-term rentals. We're not necessarily saying short-term rentals are bad. We're saying the way it was taken advantage of by certain people, at least in our neighborhood, they wrote it all the way to an extreme that was impossible to function in a neighborhood as a residential neighborhood. And with parties, events, event centers, and taking advantage of it. I hope as you consider rules and laws and ordinances to guide future things with short-term rentals, you'll consider other cities that have had success. Some cities have it in certain parts of town. I think that's a thought to think of. Some cities within our county have actually, the homeowners actually having to live in the property and maintain residence there with a short-term rental. I think that should be considered also. And there's other things that should be looked at to consider for this. I'm not looking for more than 3 minutes. I just want to say one, thank you for working so hard and diligently as a city, thanking the city workers and you pretty much volunteers. Thank you for what you've been doing here for the city also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. And just to clarify, the short-term rentals are something that has been brought to our attention, and it is something we will be working on over the coming months to come up with some concrete standards and that sort of thing. So just so everybody understands what's going on. Next, we've got John Birch, or I'm sorry, I can't quite read. John.
Bowich? I don't know.
Bowich.
B-O-U-I-T-H.
It's about Aspen Grove Behavioral. You'll defer? Okay. And then Jeremy Cottle, same thing?
Oh.
Oh, okay. All right, well, thank you. Heather Fry.
Hi, Merry Christmas. As one of the many residents who were heartbroken at the loss of the amazing massive trees at the corner of Center and State Street, I admit I begrudgingly attended the Lights On event on November 27th. I, along with so many, am deeply grateful for the massive efforts to create a wonderful, cheerful, festive atmosphere at the park. Thank you to all those who dedicated time and energy to provide our community with the spirit of this magical season. I can't say enough about all of the many friends I have sent to Orem City Park telling them, you don't even have to go to Salt Lake City. You can go to the Orem Center Park. It's fantastic. On a somber note, as this year draws to a close, I have met so many amazing Orem residents. I have learned about the many challenges and successes that are involved in caring for our city. May I ask, please remember that even if it seems that there is division, we the people care what is happening in Orem. We the people are busy with raising children, serving our neighborhoods, working long hours, especially the last couple of years. And we may not always be able to be actively engaged in what is happening in Orem, but that does not mean we don't care. Please remember your oath. Please remember to keep your egos in check as you work together to fulfill your duty to the people of Orem. I have lots of quotes that help me through difficult times, and this one is by Dwight D. Eisenhower, and he says, "We must avoid becoming a community of fear and hate and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect." And that a gentleman named Neil A. Maxwell said, "Once society loses its capacity to declare that some things are wrong per se, then it finds itself forever building temporary defenses, revising rationales, drawing new lines, but forever falling back and losing its nerve. A society which permits anything will eventually lose everything." And I would like to speak to the fact that we have members of our community who have as recorded, have referred to comments made by the public as trash. And it is disgraceful. And it is abhorrent to know that those who take the time to care and who take the time to invest in their city are equated with garbage. And I pray that as we complete this year, and that as we go into the new year, that there will be more respect given to the many residents who care so deeply about what happens in our city, and that the respect be paid to those people who put you in office. And I appreciate all that Orem has done. Thank you.
Next, we've got two names together. I'm guessing you both want to come up. Becca Driggs and Jill Barrick.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight to thank you for the memorial designation that you're going to put forward. I think these sorts of things, keeping baseball parks, Dave Spencer, building Hillcrest Park, Terry and Debbie, and now this memorial designation to preserve the burial site for two pioneer babies that have been a block from my house for the last 130 years. These sorts of things make a city livable. They make people want to stay. They're extremely meaningful. And this will have an impact on all women who will lose children. And the statistics are quite discouraging, but it will happen. And I'm so happy and I'm so proud of each of you for doing this tonight. And I am devoted towards making sure that the memorial that goes in is appropriate. And if that requires me knocking every door in Orem to get the donations, I will do it. So thank you tonight for this.
And then I really quickly want to say, as a student, this has been an incredible experience for me to have a city council back our project, a project that I dreamed up. And it's encouraged me moving forward with the cities that I live in for the rest of my life to be actively engaged. And so thank you for setting that example for me and teaching me that my voice matters.
Terry and Debbie, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I honestly love both of you. And the platforms that you ran on are platforms that matter to many, many of us. And we will make sure that they continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that's the last of our speakers signed up. Let's move on to item number 8, and that's our consent items. I'll just read through the consent items and then we'll vote to pass those. 8.1 is the approval of the meeting minutes for November 14th, 2023. 8.2 is the 2024 city council meeting schedule. 8.3 is the change with Mayor Pro Tem for January 2024 to June of 2024 with David Spencer becoming the Mayor Pro Tem. Item 8.4, appointment to the Beautification Advisory Commission, Kirsten Bascom. And I'll come back and we'll say something. 8.5 is a reappointment to the Recreation Advisory Commission, Danny Miller. 8.6, appointment to the Library Advisory Commission, Nancy Schultz. And item 8.7, reappointment to CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Commission, Ashley Gill and Eileen Black. Let me just say about all these commissions, we've got a number of commissions that all work together to make the city the best it can be. And so there are a lot of opportunities for service. We encourage people to get involved in that, and we appreciate these people for signing up again. Lene, did you want to say something about your Library Advisory Commission?
Yeah, I'd like to. So Nancy Schultz, did you make it? Are you here? Oh, would you stand up, Nancy? So Nancy put in an application to be on our Library Advisory Commission, and one of my goals for this commission has been to create a commission of diversity and a lot of different passions and demographics. And Nancy, when I spoke to her on the phone to interview her for this position, I loved how her passion is connecting our senior citizen center. Our focus in the library with our makerspace is to really create these experiences for our public, and quilting classes, teaching kids how to sew. She had so many great ideas. I'm excited to have her on our commission. So thank you for being willing to serve. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, unless there's any suggestions to change anything, we'd like to have a vote on these consent items.
You want a motion first, Mayor?
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent items.
I'll second.
Let's start with Jeff, and then Jeff, would you like to vote?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The consent items pass. Thank you. Next, we'll move to item number 9, our scheduled items. And first up, we've got Brandon Nelson, our city budget director, finance director, and John Hatterley, CPA partner with Larson and Company, to go through their findings on the audit and where we're at on that.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. It's that time of year again. We've completed our fiscal year 23 audit with our independent auditors from Larson and Company. I just wanted to start with just a couple of key points from our fiscal year 23 financials. Just as items of note, our general fund unassigned balance, which basically are funds available to spend, for lack of a better term, increased by $5.4 million comparative to the prior year. You might wonder, how did we get $5.4 million? Well, and that's what I'm going to try to just touch on. Normally, it would be sales taxes. Our sales taxes normally in the past 5 to 8 years have been very, very good. This past year, however, they only increased 0.9%, or approximately $272,000. So that growth wasn't necessarily related to sales tax. So the biggest element, as you are well aware, interest rates, inflation increased pretty dramatically over the fiscal year. At the beginning of the year, the city was earning approximately 1% on its funds. By the end of the fiscal year, we were earning around 5%. So over that period of time, our interest earnings with funds available increased over $3.7 million. So a huge majority of that growth, that $5.4 million growth, relates to those interest earnings. Looking ahead, as you're aware, each year we transfer funds from our general fund that are in, if you will, in excess, and we move those into our capital projects fund, primarily to fund park-related items, various equipment, various street project type of things, and that will be occurring again based on our fiscal 23 numbers. And then one last element, which John here will touch on in one of his reports, but we do have one fund that is in a deficit position, our facilities maintenance fund, which just to make you aware, we are working on trying to eliminate that deficit here in the current fiscal year and hope to do so by the end of the fiscal year. So with that said, first of all, are there any questions before I turn the time over to John about anything I've said or maybe anything you've heard in relation to the city's finances?
Hey, Brandon, I have a question.
You bet.
So, more and more the purchasing that people make is online. And they do now, it looks like they've figured that out. So everywhere you order something online, they do withhold sales tax. How do we track that to make sure that we're getting what we're supposed to be getting as a city when it's being held by Ralph Lauren or whoever?
There's no real way for us as a city to necessarily determine that based on internet sales as far as tracking that. Auditing is the responsibility of the State Tax Commission. I don't know their audit procedures per se in relation to internet sales. But, so if you're ordering something that doesn't have what's called Nexus here in the state of Utah, there's not really a way for us to be able to monitor that unless we go and unless we know there's particular places that our sales are occurring that we should see in our detailed reports that we get from the State Tax Commission. So we're very reliant on for internet sales, very reliant on the tax commission for that.
So the state's getting it. We just don't know if we're getting our portion.
Yeah. So again, obviously whoever the internet retailer is, it's their responsibility to report those sales in the proper jurisdiction. And so unless the State Tax Commission is auditing their records to see that that's occurring, which they do regularly. And obviously entities like Amazon, for instance, they get, I'm sure, audited all the time because they're the big player in most of the online world, right? And so I'm sure states are monitoring that all the time, but I don't have any specifics in relation to that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you bet. Anybody else? You bet.
I just want to say how good when interest was low, we refinanced bonds and we're able to save. And now that interest is higher, now it's painful for the public. But now that we're making from like 1% to 5%, you said. So it's been a very wise management of our funds to refinance when that made sense. And now we're getting our interest. So I just want to thank you for being aware, really refinancing those bonds, saving us long-term money. And now you said 3.7 million from interest. So I appreciate your good management. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that said, I'll turn the time over to John Hatterley. He is a partner with the CPA firm of Larson and Company, based out of Spanish Fork, and I think you have offices up in Salt Lake. Is that correct? Up in Salt Lake as well. So without further ado, I will turn the time over to John.
Thanks, Brandon. I'll be brief tonight. I recommend that you read through the audit report that Brandon's put together. It's a very well put together report. You'll find in the very beginning of the financial section will be our audit report, and that always precedes the actual financial statements. And I would ask that you would read through it and understand what is contained in the audit report. There is sections that pertain to your responsibility as a council and management, as well as our responsibilities and what does and does not fall under the opinions that we give. There are certain sections of the financial statements that are not considered part of the basic financial statements, so they do not fall under our opinion. And really that just translates back to the amount of information that we have and we test as part of the annual financial report. We issue 3 opinions. The first one pertains to the financial statements, and that's contained in the audit report, and that is an unmodified or an unqualified opinion. In layman's terms, that's a clean opinion. That's what everybody wants to hear, is it's a clean opinion. That means that the financial statements themselves are materially correct. The second opinion that we are required to issue is for the federal government, and that is, oh, I opened the wrong one. That is an opinion on your compliance and your internal controls on how you spend federal money. So as you know, over the last few years, you've received a significant amount of federal money, both in COVID funds and now the ARPA money. So this is kind of a dual opinion. First, we look at the compliance. So with those programs and any other federal program that you participate in, there's conditions on how you spend that money, when you can spend that money, if there's matching that you have to do as a city in order to receive those funds, and other things that we look at. So we look at your compliance first, and we found no issues there. We also look at your internal controls. When we have our audits looked at, just like we look at your books, we have external auditors that come and review our audits. We just got done with a federal audit, looking at some of our federal single audits. And what they're looking for is our documentation that you have controls in place in order to make sure that that money is tracked and that it's spent appropriately and in a timely manner. And that's also, we found no issues there either. So an unmodified or an unqualified opinion on your federal single audit as well. The next opinion that we're required to issue is for the Utah State Auditor. We issue a report. The federal single audit report, as well as the state compliance report, they're contained in the supplemental reports package that you would have received from Brandon. We are required to look at specific areas of state code that you are required to be in compliance with. And we found no material issues or significant issues that we would have to identify as part of that. So it's also an unmodified or an unqualified opinion. With that, we also look at your internal controls over compliance. We don't give an opinion on your internal controls as far as state compliance goes, but we make sure that they exist. And we actually make Brandon's team fill out a really awful internal control spreadsheet outlining every compliance that we look at and what the controls are that he has in place. And so we found no concerns with the controls that are in place in order to keep you guys in compliance with the Utah State Code. There were a couple of findings. Brandon mentioned one of them. The facilities maintenance fund is currently in a deficit position. It was in a deficit position last year. And what the requirement is you have to reduce that deficit by 5% of the revenue coming into that fund on an annual basis each year until that is taken care of. The city did transfer a significant amount of money into that fund last year, hoping to reduce that deficit and eradicate it, but the costs in that fund ended up being more than were anticipated. So the deficit actually increased. The city has planned for in the 2024 budget an increase of the amount of costs that are being allocated to other funds. So the other funds and departments are going to pay into that facilities maintenance. And that should, based on the numbers right now, should eradicate that deficit fund balance. So I expect that is not a concern next year. The second finding is the general fund balance. You are required to maintain only a 35% maximum fund balance, and that's 35% of all the revenue of the general fund for the year. Currently, you're sitting about 40%. Do I think this is a concern? Well, it's a concern, yes, because state code says you can only have 35%, but it's not a bad problem to have to say that, hey, we have some money in the coffers that we can save for rainy days. And in fact, those funds are planned for future projects. And I think one of them is going to be the new building that you'll be in.
Can I ask about that? I think we generally have, if I remember, 15% was kind of what we want to keep there. And then we would transfer everything else to capital improvement project. Is that still what we're going to do?
Correct. Yep.
Yep. And in talking to Brandon's team, when we issued the finding, that is their expectation when some of these funds are spent. Part of the other problem is a lot of the cities and the counties, all the local governments across the state that received COVID money and ARPA money. That's why the code changed from 25% to 35%. Because you had a huge influx of money from the federal government that really was, you didn't ask for it. It was just given to you. And you had to find ways to allocate that money or spend that money. And people weren't prepared to all of a sudden spend that much money. And so everybody's fund balance kind of skyrocketed a little bit. But once again, knowing the projects that are coming up, knowing the costs that are coming up for the city, I expect that this, I expect to see the fund balance drop back down to around the 15%. In speaking of Brandon's team. The last letter that we issue is just communication to you as a council, and that was sent to you as well. And I would just recommend that you read through that. Those are things that we're required to disclose to you at the close of our audit. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to have phone calls. I know that you probably haven't had time to read through the entire all of the reports, but I'm available anytime to answer questions and love to chat because I want you to understand what we do as auditors and understand the language that we put in our reports and what that means to the city. With that, if there's any questions now, I'm happy to answer questions.
Mayor, do we need a motion to accept the audit? Maybe someone on the side bench could help me, or Brandon, you
Yeah,
can.
there should be a resolution. They're accepting the audit.
It doesn't say that on what we have.
And I know in the packet, I believe. there
Okay,
was a
maybe in the
resolution
packet, not on the
packet.
paper. I'll look at the packet. Okay. I've gotten a cheat sheet. Is that okay? You won't write me down on your audit if I get quotes? Do I read all this resolution? Okay. A resolution by the Orem City Council that we accept the audit for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023 as completed and presented by Larson and Company PC. Is that adequate, Stephen? Or do I need to read all the whereas?
You just said, no, you don't need to read all the whereas, but it's your motion to approve.
My
the
motion is
resolution.
to approve the audit as presented by Larson and Company for June.
Except, make sure it's
Except.
approved. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I said them all now and not sure we got them in the right order, Mayor. You want to try to see if anyone will second that garbled message?
I'll be happy to second it.
You going to Jeffrey?
Aye.
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 The budget passes. And this, in the summary of the budget, we went through a meeting yesterday with Brandon's doing a great job as our financial director. And Larson just verified that again. So we appreciate that. Thank you. All right, next up, item 9.2. We've got a resolution for a new Orem City seal. Jacob Summers, one of our city attorneys, will present that to us.
Mayor, council members, thank you for your time this evening. Before the city council tonight is a resolution to adopt a new city seal. The city seal design that has been circulated is before you now. This new city seal includes obviously the name of the city of Orem. It includes the city's family slogan, the city's slogan, Family City USA, the incorporation date of the city itself, 1919,
And then based off of the resolution passed by the city council in October to display the national motto, "In God We Trust," it is now going to be incorporated into the city seal. That city seal would then ultimately be displayed here in the city council chambers behind the dais of the city council. Wanted to speak specifically as to the inclusion of the national motto here. The purpose is for us to include it in our city seal is to foster patriotism, convey a sense of formality and solemnity to the city business, and also to express confidence in the future and the community. I know that there has been recent press and discussion regarding the city's decision to display the national motto. In anticipation of that, I looked around to see what other communities have done as far as it pertains to referencing of deity, divine, or adoption of the national motto in their seals or flags. And as you can see, the state of Arizona, their state seal incorporates their state motto, which means God enriches. The state of Colorado has done the same. Their Latin phrase translates to nothing without the deity or nothing without the divine will. State of Florida, states of Mississippi have also adopted the national motto. Those both appear on their seal. And in the case of Mississippi, they just recently adopted a new state flag. And it is on their state flag as well as the flag of Georgia. And then the state of South Dakota has a motto that is included on their state seal, and it says, "Under God, the people rule." And so the adoption of the national motto and incorporating it into the city seal is nothing new. It is nothing that is cutting edge, bleeding edge, or out there as far as pushing the limits of constitutionality. In particular, the courts have already addressed the national motto in a number of different settings, most particularly on the display on the US currency. In the 10th Circuit, there was the case in 1996 where a group sued the US Secretary of the Treasury to remove the national motto from currency. And really, as the court in the 10th Circuit went through that, they found that this national motto has a secular purpose, a secular nature, in that it symbolizes the historical role of religion in our society. It formalizes the medium of exchange, it fosters patriotism, and it expresses confidence in the future. The 10th Circuit is not alone in making this type of determination. The 9th Circuit, in addressing the national motto on coinage and currency, stated this: "It is quite obvious that the national motto and the slogan on coinage and currency, 'In God We Trust,' has nothing whatsoever to do with the establishment of religion. Its use is of patriotic or ceremonial character and bears no true resemblance to a governmental sponsorship of a religious exercise." And then they further went on to say, "The national motto is excluded from the First Amendment significance because the motto has no theological or ritualistic impact. As stated by the congressional report, it has a spiritual and psychological value and inspirational quality." The Fourth Circuit has ruled likewise on the issue of the national motto on currency, basically quoting almost identically the language from the 9th Circuit. And then ultimately the 6th Circuit has ruled similarly. And then they've noted that because the US Supreme Court has not taken appeals from the other circuits upon certiorari, that in essence, the US Supreme Court has implicitly ruled that the national motto does not violate the Establishment Clause. It does not further any sort of religious purpose or establishment of any one religion against another religion or religion against non-religion. And so this resolution speaks to the history of the national motto, also the inclusions, the reasons why the City Council would adopt the new seal, including the national motto, and then ultimately adopting the new city seal. And with that, I present this resolution for the council to discuss.
Do we have any questions? Debbie?
So we did receive an email from an organization, questioning this motto, but from what I can see here, you could easily defend that if they ever did anything more than write us a letter, correct?
Correct. Now, again, I'm not going to put out there that nobody would challenge the city's action here. But again, I believe that we are on good footing based on prior rulings in multiple different federal district circuit courts of appeal, as well as the statements made by U.S. Supreme Court in other Establishment Clause cases.
Any other questions?
And I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that the city council by resolution adopt the new Orem city seal.
Second?
Jeff?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The resolution passes. Next up, we've got item 9.3, a resolution on the historical memorial that was mentioned earlier. And Jake will walk us through that.
Mayor and city council members, thank you for, again, the time to address this. We have addressed this in a prior work session. This resolution has been modified in a couple different ways since our work session meeting, mainly to address some of the concerns that were raised and some of the requests that were made during our work session, and I'll address those as we go through this. In essence, this resolution is calling to one, designate or direct city staff to prepare and plan development for a landscape open space or landscape park on the area of 1600 North, 411 West. But also to know that in the future that there is an anticipated plan to build a well house on this parcel. And so that there would be treatments, aesthetics, or evaluations, or not evaluations, but elevations that would incorporate the historic nature of that parcel of land. Also, the creation of a women's and children's memorial. And then zooming out and looking at a broader picture, refreshing our historic marker program, and then being able to incorporate that into our heritage park that should be coming online in the future. So, as I said, there are a number of requests or calls to action here in this resolution. And really, I don't want to go through all of them because we've discussed this at length in the work session. But again, that's the highlights of that we would be beginning the planning and development of this Women and Children's Monument, and that we would reaffirm the desire to preserve the unique nature of lands located within the PF zone. Request city staff to develop plans for a landscape park or open space on the parcel of land at 1600 North, 411 West. And then calls on the Historical Preservation Advisory Commission to develop criteria and a procedure for the placement of historical markers throughout the city of Orem. And then also calls for ultimately the incorporation of these markers in the Heritage Park tank site. So again, why now?
Say, Tom.
Why? Oh,
Could I ask
go
a
ahead.
question? I don't think
Absolutely.
anything, I heard the passionate plea from two citizens earlier that they would knock on doors and raise money. At this point, we're not allocating budget dollars to it. We're just approving it subject to funding being raised. Is that correct? That's what our current proposal is?
The current proposal, as it is worded in the resolution, is direct city staff to start the development and planning. So there would be expenditure of funds based on staff time, but ultimately for the creation of a memorial, I would anticipate we would be coming back looking for appropriation of funds. I'll let Brent speak to that.
Yeah, so we don't have the exact costs all figured out yet, and we would expect that there would even be potentially a fundraising effort that might go along with it. But we would intend to, I guess, use this as direction from you you and the rest of the council to begin to design and come up with that cost budget.
Some staff time and some soft cost for design is what you're asking for right now. Is that correct?
Well, and we would anticipate that we would engage with a third-party
Right,
entity
those are
in
the
terms of the
soft cost
design.
of design, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And again, as we explained in the work session, why now? Again, we've just recently celebrated our centennial about 4 years ago. As the city is now, I believe, entering a new chapter of its being, is wanting to protect the core heart of the community, growing that heart and being able to have a consistent story throughout the city. Efforts that we've already taken to preserve unique properties. As the council is well aware, the council took steps in May to create the public facility zone and placed government property, owned property, as well as properties that had been uniquely paid for by Orem tax dollars to be protected within that public facility zone. The section of the parcel that we were talking about on 1600 North, 411 West is already designated within that PF zone. Other efforts to preserve Orem history, and I wanted to take again a global picture here, is the city council back in 1990 adopted the Historical Preservation Advisory Commission, or created it, and gave specific duties and responsibilities to that commission. Third, the city of Orem has been able to work with civic partners like the CIRA, specifically the Orem Heritage Museum, and they serve a very important role in preserving the history of Orem, allowing residents to have free admission to come into the museum and see the artifacts and learn the story of the city of Orem. But then also we have citizen-led efforts, just like the city council heard today from Ms. Barrick, and I've included their photos here from a recent KSL article. Again, citizen resident-led efforts to preserve Orem's unique history. And with that, I think it's an important partnership between citizens, these nonprofit groups, and volunteers. Wanted to speak briefly to the Women and Children's Memorial. We don't have any designs. We don't have any location specifically identified for this memorial. Just that it would honor the role of women in the history, and we'd want to acknowledge their role, women's role in the founding of the city of Orem, leadership within the community, and the unique challenges that they have faced throughout the history of Orem. It would not necessarily be this photo. I just wanted to find something that would be similar to perhaps what a design might be. Again, speaking to the preservation of the 1600 North parcel, it is already within the PF zone, and then it calls for the landscaping of that parcel, but also the incorporation and acknowledgement of a future development of a well house on that parcel. The resolution also speaks largely to adopting a criterion to decide what is historic, what is it that we want to preserve within the city, and that would be placed with the Historical Preservation Advisory Commission, and then also a desire to refresh the historical marker design that's already been adopted by the City Council. And then lastly, the inclusion and installment of this with the Heritage Park tank site. To have a central location where residents and visitors of Orem can come and learn of history and the Orem history in one location, but then could also go out and find corresponding markers throughout the community. And with that, I would open it up for any discussion and consideration.
I just want to say, Jake, as far as you're seeing a lot more from the council lately in terms of going back to core values and going back to preserving our history and doing the things that really affect Orem's heart. And that's where, you know, we've got our foundational principles of God, family, country, and then our history that we're trying to make sure it gets remembered as our city grows, and we try and still keep that community that we've had. So,
Sorry.
I brought this up in the work session too. I think this is a great start, and especially because of this location, the significance of the family that were the children that passed away there. But it's a very difficult piece of ground to pull into. I mean, with that 16th North, it's really tricky to get into that and to be able to see it. I would like to see going forward, and I'm sure there's a lot of other pieces of ground the city has that might be more accessible. I'd love to see this not end with this, especially with honoring women, that it would be nice to have a piece of ground that's easier to access. Anyway, just I think it's a good starting point with what the mayor's saying, but I'd like to see that continue with maybe another spot in the future.
So Terry, we are already working on that. I would just like to say, I appreciate Jake and all the work that he's put into this, and all of our staff. And I really want to express my gratitude. I see Becca and Jill had to leave, but to Becca Driggs, Jill Barrick, Julie Allen, Sarah Reed, Steve Nelson, and James McBride for bringing this forward. I live in this area. This was family lore that we had heard about for 20 years with these pioneer babies being born there. But when Becca Driggs, through her research, and Julie Allen found the journals that provided documentation for this having happened, it really put forth this effort to preserve this area and to memorialize this area in particular, and to create this whole discussion of recognizing women and providing for this opportunity for this location and others for Women's and Children's Memorial. This project is very close to my heart and one I've been working on for over a year now. And I hope I can get a positive recommendation from the council when we vote on this. There have been a few obstacles that we've had to overcome, but I feel like we're there now, and I'm overjoyed to be at this point. I appreciate, like I said, the support of our staff, our city manager, Bren Bybee, members of the community. After this was on the media and on the news, I received just a lot of contact and information and gratitude, of support, feeling messages of support for this. I just want to mention too that one of the founding partners of the Nextdoor Quick Quack, the Quick Quack Nextdoor, reached out and also is interested in supporting that particular area for this monument. This resolution allows us to move forward with plans for creating a beautiful place of remembrance and recognition of the struggles and the strength of women. And more importantly, to respect this sacred ground and assure that these two baby boys that are buried there are not forgotten. As I mentioned, Terry, we have plans to move forward and put together a citizen design team to plan this memorial and work with our Historic Preservation Commission. This is the beginning of great things happening in Orem, in our lives, in the lives of the women here in Orem, and also in the lives of all those who love and support the women of Orem. So I just want to express once again my gratitude. I hope we can get a positive recommendation, a positive vote on this resolution tonight. I feel like we've got the votes, but anyway, thank you for all the work. Thank you to everyone who's listening, who contributed to this.
Thank you.
And I'm ready to make a motion unless someone else would like to say anything. Go for it. Okay, I move that we approve the resolution for the historical memorial for the city of Orem.
I'm going to second that.
Oh, aye.
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 Resolution passes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 9.4. This is a public hearing on a rezone. And this is amending Article 22-5-3A and the zoning map of the city of Orem by enacting Article 22-11-65 and Appendix ZZ of the Orem City Code, and by rezoning the property located generally at 1350 East, 740 North from the R12 zone to the PD 52 zone, approximately 6 acres. And Jason, would you like to present that to us?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As stated, this is an existing Behavioral Hospital located at 1350 East, 740 North. It was originally constructed in 1984 under a conditional use permit. It's currently zoned R12, which is a residential zone. Back in '84, they did allow them as a conditional use. So originally it was approved as a conditional use. It was amended to add school uses in 2001. So there's a combination of uses that are currently at this facility. They also treat those that have some behavioral issues, and also a school to help those individuals as well. So they're here tonight to add some additional beds. They would like to add 24 beds, and I'll go through that and explain that. But in order to do that, expanding a conditional use is not possible under current standards. We don't allow them as conditional uses any longer. So it's legally established, and it's a legal non-conforming use currently. What the applicants are proposing is to change it to a PD zone, a planned development zone, that would allow this use to expand. So as I stated, it's currently zoned R12. They would like to zone it to a PD 52 zone. Within, I'm just going to go through really quick and talk about what's in the PD zone, and then we'll talk about the site plan as well. So the advantage of a PD zone is that the city can restrict or limit the types of uses that are allowed in a particular zone, because we're creating this PD 52 as a unique zone for this location. We can craft it, and with the developer, the property owners and the city have come up with this to be able to do what they need to do, but also then limit what they can do in the future. So under C, permitted uses, hospital services are permitted and secondary schools are permitted, but those are the only two uses that would be permitted on this location. So that's an advantage to be able to restrict that. It's also limited to what's on the concept plan. So in the future, if there's any development on this property and they want to expand, they would have to come back through this process, ultimately through the city council. The expansion is limited to 15-foot height. The existing facility remains as is, but any new expansion, the way that the current ordinance is written, is 15 feet is the maximum. With the parapet, or with the functionality of heating mechanical equipment on top of that at 10 feet. So it does allow for a little bit of roof mechanical equipment. Setbacks, they worked with the neighborhood to the south to make sure that the addition was set back far enough. And I'll show you on the concept plan, the 80 feet is their setback from the residential properties to the south to where it comes into that structure. The parking is also restricted to 110 feet, which is on the west side of the property, which I'll show you also. Architectural standards are outlined, landscaping standards are outlined. Parking is a minimum of 139 parking stalls would be required based on 1 stall per 2 beds for the initial, or for the expansion of what they're proposing tonight. So getting into the site plan, you can see in the darker gray, that is the 24-bed expansion that they want to do. You can see that it's 80 feet from the south property line, which is what has been negotiated and worked on with the neighbors. The parking that you can see to the west or left side of your screen is 110 feet, which is also as far back as they can do it and still provide the 139 parking stalls. So the applicants are proposing 154 total beds in the facility. And this concept plan that you see would be part of the ordinance. So anybody that comes in the future would be tied to this specific layout and site plan. This is the proposed structure, and you can see, if I can point out, this is the closest 80-foot point to the neighbors, and the only access or opening would be the door that's required for building code. So that the only opening that you see that's closest to the neighbors would be for an opening only. There would be no windows or anything of that nature. And these are the elevations. You'll see it matches similar to what is existing there with the current facility. The Planning Commission did review this and did make a positive recommendation to the council to create the PD 52 zone and then also rezone the property to that zone, which would also include the appendix ZZ, which would be the concept plan and the elevations that you've seen. Any questions that I can address?
Tom?
Good. Go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Tom.
You mentioned this, the neighbors had expressed some favorable for it, or maybe Lene, you did. Could you share that with us?
So the planning commission, they had one spokesman, and I believe they're here tonight, and they can get up and share their opinion. But they did the ultimate first review, had the building a little bit closer to the neighbors. So they worked with them in a neighborhood meeting and asked them not only to create a PD rather than rezone it to a PO zone, which would allow additional uses. The PD zone, like I stated, restricts them to the 2 uses only, but it also then limits them to this concept plan, which is 80 feet. So they did work with the neighbors to try to get it as far away as they could from them. And I think they've made a compromise on that.
My question, of course, is I'm assuming the demand is great. And what's our timeline if it gets approved tonight?
I would have to defer to the applicant, but I think they're anxious to move forward with this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
The applicants are here if you would like.
Okay, I'd be curious about the timeline too, and then if there are conditions on the timeline. But let's go ahead and, do you want to bring the applicants?
Yeah,
up?
if they'd
You
like
wanna
to come
open the
up,
Public hearing.
My name's Dave Gardner, George Bills. We've been working with the hospital to work through this expansion permit process. So I'm sorry, what was the question that I asked?
I had a question as far as what the time frame is for this, and then also if there are limitations on the time frame as far as if it gets approved tonight, how long do you have to fulfill that?
And my other question was the demand. I'm sure you'll fill them as soon as they're available, I'm assuming.
The demand?
The demand, people moving in.
Yeah, there is a.
They're not moving in, using the facility.
I'm not sure the starting point on, there's still quite a bit of work to do once we're approved. But once that's occurred, we're ready to go. We want to get the building designed and get the permits as fast as we can.
So they will need to go through planning commission for site plan. So that is part of the process. Once, if it's approved tonight, they will have that process, which is a couple-month process.
I guess my question is, say, once it's approved, is there a time limitation on, do they have to do it within 3 years or 5 years or 10 years or?
So if they go through and actually obtain a site plan from the planning commission, there is a 2-year limit. So that if they don't do it within 2 years, it expires, they go through the process. So there is a 2-year time once it's approved.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the council? Okay, we'll open this up as a public hearing. Anyone from the public that would like to comment on this is free to come up and make a comment.
Yeah.
Mayor and council members, I appreciate you giving me a minute. My name's Bruce Cameron. I live on Bella Vista Drive, 658 North Bella Vista Drive. My house is just right below that line there where the new addition is. And I'm representing the Bella Vista neighborhood. And I think you'll remember me from a safety issue that we had over on Palisade Drive with the Choker Islands. And so, I wanted to thank the council for your willingness to listen on that issue and for your great service, especially for the 2 members that are leaving the council. We do appreciate all that you've done. So in regard to this hospital addition, I've lived next to this for years. I've actually participated in services over there. We recognize the importance of this facility in our community. We are not opposed to the addition. When the first site plan came out, we had some concerns because the addition was turned right face into our fences at 15 to 20 feet. And the heights were an issue with some of the air conditioning units and so forth. But Jeremy Cottle, the other members of the hospital, Gardner Associates, have been very good in talking to the neighbors and getting our opinions. They have made significant changes in our favor at our request, which we really appreciate. At the Planning Commission meeting, I addressed the Planning Commission and explained that we are overall favorable to the addition as long as it stays within the PD zone so that it's specific on what's allowed and what is not allowed. And at the end of the Planning Commission meeting last week, there was one point that was brought up in the original neighborhood meeting that did not get addressed in the PD zone. And the neighbor that had that concern was unable to attend. That's Kevin Hawkins, and his home is just about 3 houses down the street from mine. And as a courtesy to him and as I think a concern for the neighbors, we wanted to, I'd like to read his comment here. This is an email to me. He said that there is one more accommodation I would like to make as a condition of approval. The current practice at this facility is that they have a designated smoking area on the south side of their facility that is in full view of our subdivision. I would like to request that the applicant do one of two things: change the location for the smoking area to the north side of the building, or build an 8-foot screen wall that totally blocks the view of the smoking area from our community. Let me know your thoughts on this and so forth. Apparently the Hawkins have had it mentioned that they have a little congregation of some of the residents that come out in groups and smoke next to their fence, and that I've never seen that myself because we're a little more east, but I feel like it needs to be discussed. And I'd like, if possible, the applicant to kind of address that issue if possible. Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant like to respond to that?
As a hospital, we have lots of regulations, including regulations about outdoor smoking. No indoor smoking is allowed, obviously. I think it's been demonstrated that we've tried to work with the neighbors. I don't know exactly what the solution could be. Perhaps we could put a sign up or something. We're open to continue working with the neighbors. We need to work with the neighbors. But
so would you be willing to, maybe because we can move forward on this and we could just put a contingency in there that something acceptable to the neighbors as far as the smoking issue is resolved before it's finally approved? Or Jason, how would you do that?
Yeah, you're hopefully approving it tonight if that's the direction, but then you could direct them to work with the neighbors, whether that's a screening around the current smoking area, whether that's relocating it to the north, whether that's doing something to, to discourage them from smoking next to the fence. But that's something that, unless you want to add it directly to the ordinance, which I would not necessarily recommend, but I would, recommend that they continue to work with the neighbors to try to find a solution, whether that's screening or relocating the area.
So if we pass it, there can be something that makes it so that has to happen before it ultimately is done.
And when they come to the planning commission for the site plan, they could address that, show that where that's, if they've screened it, if they've relocated it, those types of things. Now, it's not going to prevent them from somebody, randomly walking out and smoking next to the fence. But if they do get a complaint, they would be able to address that and ask them to, go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think the issue that was brought up, that there's a specific area that's close to somebody's house or something like that. So yeah, any other questions or? Yeah, let's, okay, so we'll work forward on that. And then any other public comments?
Yes, good evening. My name is Patrick Jackson. I'm a resident of Orem for many years. I just have a personal experience with this hospital. I'd like to encourage you to move forward on this. Last year, my wife had some real serious medical issues involving COVID-19. She tried to commit suicide twice. I stopped it. The first time in April, we tried to get her in Provo Canyon Hospital, which was very close, but we couldn't. She had to go up to the LDS hospital, and she was there for a week. She didn't get a lot of help there, but I had to travel up there every night to visit her. The second time, in the end of June, she was able to get into the Provo Canyon Hospital, and she was there for 3 weeks, and she did very well. It's a very competent faculty and staff, and she still goes to outpatient counseling with one of the medical people there. So anything you can do to help further this cause, because I think the way things are going, that we may experience more of our citizens having breakdowns of this kind, and it would be great if they could stay in their own community. And so that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry?
Just a comment, sitting in the planning commission meeting when the hospital came, I was impressed with the neighbors that came in support of the hospital. That's not usually the case when there's a project going on. We all have some kind of issues. And my understanding is from the planning commission that the building was going to be closer to the residents, and you moved the building after working with the residents. I think that's a great message that it can happen. And I also just mentioned that it's sure nice it's a one-story building. That's different than somebody having a 4-story high-density apartment behind their house. So thank you for listening to the residents. The landscaping is beautiful. I mean, there's a lot of grass, which is nice. I think that's a nice thing if you lived over there to have all this grass behind you and one-story buildings. So, but I think that's a great message as far as businesses working with residents to try to say there's got to be a way we can come with a solution. So thank you, both residents and business hospital, for working together. Good example.
Are there any other comments before we close the public hearing part? Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
Mayor, if I could I suggest one minor change to the language? Jason, if you could go back to the text. There's some remnant language that's not supposed to be there still. And if Jason can go up to the occupancy limit language. Let's see, where is that? Oh, sorry. So it's in the second sentence of subsection C there, where we say the total number of beds related to the hospital use shall be limited to a maximum of 104 beds, and the total number of beds for all uses shall be limited to 154. I would suggest that we just state that the total number of beds is limited to 154. We had originally, when we were drafting this, we were trying to distinguish between a couple of different uses that existed in the hospital. They basically have juveniles in there versus, non-juveniles. But then ultimately we decided not to try and make that distinction. And that language is just kind of a remnant left over and shouldn't be there anymore. So suggest that change.
Yeah, I think we're fine with that. That makes sense. Anything else?
So can I make a comment there?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Steve. That's why we have you as our city attorney. This guy is amazing. We just really appreciate him. Very, very great attention to detail. I feel very confident with him in charge. I went to the neighborhood meeting And and then I just didn't follow this, right? Until I happened to be in the planning commission meeting where you presented this again. And can I just tell you, the whole experience was different. And to echo what Terry said, it is so rewarding to see a developer who works with the neighbors, who is conscientious and who cares about the impact that their development is going to have on the neighborhood. And I just appreciate you so much for bringing this development to us. It has a great benefit for our community, and everyone around it seems to really be appreciative of your endeavors to listen to them and in your design. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to second what Terry and Linnea have both said. Just, this is the way it's supposed to work, as far as the developers come in and work with the neighbors and come to a solution that works for everyone. So we do appreciate that. Does somebody like to make a motion? The only issue I'm not sure how to deal with is the issue with the smoking, but I think other than that, we're ready to do a motion.
I can make the motion. I just need a little help with your correction. I move that we amend Article 22-5-3A and the zoning map of the city of Orem by enacting Article 22-11-65 and the Appendix ZZ of the Orem City Code, and by rezoning the property located generally at 1350 East, 740 North from R12 zone to the PD 52 zone, approximately 6 acres. What else?
And you can just say with the change that I suggested to subsection C, that we're just going to have a maximum number of beds of 154.
And with the maximum of 154 as recommended by Steve Earle, our attorney.
Second.
Jeff?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The rezone passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will. So, all right. So we have made a lot of progress tonight. And we've got one more item. I've had a couple recommendations since we've been here for 2 hours, that we just take a quick 5-minute break and then reconvene, and we'll be very timely on starting again. So just 5-minute break. Thanks.
Troublemaker, I can tell. Because I was like, no, there's oh, wait a minute, isn't the hard There's a lot of
Oh, no, no, no. My bad, we're not on. No, I had to know. I was student. No, I don't, I students living there. Those three. Yeah. Those people go around the city. Yeah, just settle in. Yeah. We only want one. One was a data. We've already got one that's been enforced this week. So now they're changing again. I mean, just that's what it is. It's great. But it's okay because we have a conservative government. Yeah. It's so green. It's not like you got to play them around.
So, how far ahead of time do you guys need this stuff in order to trigger no, just in order to implement having the theater bring key lights or just any adjusting stuff. A year ahead, like right now. So if we need about another year ahead, can I put back in about September? That's a thing. I mean, because I don't know if they're like a year is too soon, because don't forget about it when you start playing. So if I were to come back in about September, October, would it be more necessary for me to come back and just sort of remind you guys at that time? I understand that I called
Scott, you gonna open? All right, I'll follow.
Yeah, what I mean is, I think it's heading into now you guys will have I'm not even asking you to start. You already started. Posting. And, how much time do you need before you start planning for some of this board? I'm going to come to a council meeting addressing, yeah, I can do that too. How early do you start? I want to bring up something about public photography at the mall.
Okay, let's call this meeting back to order. All right, welcome back. We'll move on to item 9.5, a public hearing considering a proposed settlement agreement between Wright Development Group and the city of Orem regarding development of the property located generally at 841 South State Street, the former Meadow Gold property. Steve Earle will present this to us.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and City Council. As the mayor just stated, this is you have before you a proposed settlement agreement between the city and Wright Development concerning the property located at 841 South State Street, also commonly known as the former Meadow Gold property. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background to what brings us to this point. And many of you know this history, but maybe some in the audience don't. Back in 2018, the City Council enacted the State Street District zones. So there were 5 district zones along key intersections with State Street. One of those State Street District zones was known as the Arts District Zone. It was located generally at the intersection of 800 South and State Street. It included the property that we're discussing tonight, the former Meadow Gold property at 841 South State Street. A couple years later, after the property was rezoned, well, I should back up and say the Arts District Zone allowed for mixed-use developments, including high-density residential development, and as did the other State Street District zones as well. A couple years later, in approximately July 2021, Wright Development, who owns the property at the former Meadow Gold property, submitted a site plan application to develop a mixed-use project in accordance with the Arts District Zone. That project basically consisted of 7 stories, 78 feet in height, approximately 335 residential units. And anyway, so that there was some dispute after the initial application was submitted as to whether that application was complete or not. But shortly after, that occurred, the City Council enacted a moratorium on any residential development along the State Street corridor. That had the effect of essentially halting that project from moving forward. Obviously, Wright Development was not happy with the fact that the city council enacted that moratorium, and they filed a lawsuit against the city a couple of weeks later in September of 2021. Essentially, that lawsuit argued that the moratorium was invalid, and also that they claimed that their site plan application had vested before the city council enacted the moratorium. So since that time in September of 2021, the city has been involved in that litigation with Right Development. At some point, probably beginning in late 2021, early 2022, we explored the possibility of reaching some sort of a compromise settlement with Right Development, explored a number of different possibilities. One of the objectives was to potentially avoid the worst case scenario, if you will, at least from the city's perspective and from probably the neighbor's perspective as well. In terms of having a very large building, 78 feet high, and which would have a lot of impact on the neighborhood. And so as part of that, those discussions, we came up with a proposal, if you will, to as a possible compromise settlement that would reduce the scope and size of the development that they could do on the property. The proposal, and this is included in the proposed settlement agreement that you have before you tonight, the proposed settlement would reduce the maximum project height from 78 feet to 52 feet, would reduce the total number of stories allowed from 7 to 4, would reduce the number of residential units slightly from 335 to 311. It would eliminate the commercial area. Originally in their original project proposal, they had approximately 42,000 square feet of commercial area. And in the proposed settlement agreement, they would have 0 commercial square footage. The reason that matters a little bit is because that reduces both traffic impact and as well as parking demand on the project. So the number of required parking stalls in the original project was 626, and the proposed settlement would have a required number of parking stalls of 650. So not only increase the number of parking stalls, but also by elimination of the commercial area and the reduction in residential units, and decrease the parking demand that the project would create, as well as decrease the amount of traffic. So the proposed agreement that you have before you tonight then would allow that reduced scope concept plan that I just mentioned. Jason Bench maybe can go through some of the additional development standards, but maybe I can point out just a couple of other things. A couple of other things in the settlement agreement basically provides that any rooftop amenities can't be used between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. They had originally proposed having some pickleball courts and possibly a swimming pool on the roof of the project, and there was concern about noise emanating from those amenities that we wanted to restrict as much as possible. The proposed agreement also requires compliance with the concept plan, including the elevations, which Jason will show you in just a moment, as well as development standards that deal with things like architectural features, materials, windows, and things like that. And maybe with that, I'll have a couple more comments after Jason's done, but maybe Jason can go through, he can show you some of the elevations as well as what some of the other standards are that are being proposed in the agreement.
Sure. So just kind of highlight the location here. It's currently zoned C2. Some of the things that Steve's already addressed: 52 feet height, 311 residential units. Parking is 650, which is 2.09 stalls per unit. If you do the calculation on that. Compliance with the building elevations, which I'll show you here. And then, of course, the building materials, which Steve has pointed out, would be specific to what they would be required to maintain. This would be the elevation or the floor, the site plan. If I can zoom in a little bit, as you can see the setbacks off of State Street. And then the setbacks from the neighborhood as well. Then this would be the proposed 4-story structure that they would propose. I'll show you what the existing or the previous one was as well. You can see the street would have landscaping along the streets, and then they'll have some courtyard for the residents as well. So this represents the 4 stories, 52 feet. And then this is showing what was proposed in 2021. This is the 7-story proposal. 79 feet. And then just to show you, this is the 7 stories. So this is what was originally proposed, and this is what is proposed today, which is the 4-story within the development agreement. That's the information that I have.
Thanks, Jason. So as we bring this to you, we fully recognize that this is a difficult and probably painful discussion and a decision to make. And obviously, I think that if this were a brand new proposal that were being brought to you with no history or no attempt to settle a lawsuit, my guess would be that nobody on the council would be in favor of this. I think that the current council, when you basically repealed the State Street district zones, indicated your intent that you didn't really want to see any more high density housing along State Street. I think that's probably the council's current intention and desire. But unfortunately, this doesn't come to us in a vacuum or as a brand new greenfield type of a proposal. I mean, this is basically an opportunity to resolve the lawsuit. And I guess why that's important is if we don't resolve the lawsuit by way of this settlement agreement, there's a possibility that something much worse could happen. So in any litigation is uncertain as to the outcome. And there's the possibility that the original proposal, the 7-story, 78-foot high project could be built on that property if the city were to lose the lawsuit. And so the city, as part of this settlement proposal, we're trying to eliminate, if you will, again, the worst case scenario, the worst possible outcome, and to mitigate the city's risk. So unfortunately, it's not a question for the city council tonight of whether you want to see high density residential development on the property or not. If that were the only question, I think the answer to that would be obvious. But it's really, do we want to mitigate the city's risk and achieve what we think is the best possible compromise that we've been able to reach in order to avoid the potential downside if we were to lose the lawsuit? So again, I recognize this is difficult. I don't think anybody or very few people in this room would really want to see a high density residential project on this property. But again, it is a matter of, is it in the best interest of the city to resolve the lawsuit by entering into this proposed settlement agreement? And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If it's my understanding that they would have 3 years, is that correct still? If we did settle the lawsuit, they would have to build it within 3 years. And if they didn't, then what happens then?
Yeah, if I can just kind of review the agreement, you're right. It's a 3-year, I believe it's 3 years to obtain an approved site plan, if I'm remembering correctly. I'll just verify that, but that's my recollection. Yeah.
My question is, if they don't build it within 3 years, is it just, what happens? It's all null and void and then it's empty property?
Yeah, that's essentially right. So this proposed settlement agreement gives them vested rights to develop this reduced scope project and to obtain an approved site plan for that 3-year period. If they weren't, for whatever reason, if they decided not to pursue it, then they would lose those vested rights.
If they get if they get the site plan approved within 3 years, then, so say they got it after 2.5 years, how much longer do they have to actually complete the project?
So once you have an approved site plan, you're essentially considered vested in the project. And so then it becomes, I think our ordinance gives them 1 or 2 years to complete, or
2 years.
2 years essentially to complete the project. You know, I think our typical practice, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but as long as they're making progress, we typically.
So not typically to complete the project, but to actually pull a building.
Okay,
permit
that's
within-
the standard, is to pull a building permit. And the reason that's important is that's where kind of the rubber meets the road when you have to pay a bunch of fees to pull a building permit. So that's not something you can just do lightly. You have to pay impact fees and inspection fees. And, you know, for a project of this size, that would be, I would think, millions of dollars. So you have to really be committed to the project when you're pulling permits.
So Jason, I've got a question on that same line. Is there's a little development on 1600 North that they were going to put twin homes, and they pulled the permit, but it's been like forever, and they have forever to build it.
The one on furthest east, are you talking about?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that plat has been recorded, so that is vested. So they,
But they're not doing anything with it. So
yeah, so it's zone PRD. I'm assuming that's the one you're talking about with the
Yes.
cul-de-sac. Yeah, because it's zone PRD and the plat has been recorded, and we are actually getting progress on that. But yeah, that's a different issue in the fact that they've recorded the plat and it's zone PRD, so they can build it according to that standard.
and they can take as long as they want.
Yes.
So I have one more question too. If you go back to the picture of on 900 East. Keep going. South, sorry. Correct.
Say that again.
The main thing when you can see the roads.
Oh,
You're making us sick, Jason.
trying to be fast. But
So,
that's all the slides I have. So which,
the picture, yeah, right there, right. So on 900 South, you have an in and out. And I think we talked about, is there a way that 900 South could be a one-way so the traffic does not go into the neighborhood? Or that's long gone?
Yeah, I don't know that that's something we really talked about.
I mean, I brought up the meeting, but that's fine.
Okay, yeah. Right now, it's proposed as a full access, as far as I can tell. You know, if a traffic study, one of the other requirements of the settlement agreement is they have to do a traffic study with the project, and so that traffic study will typically have mitigation measures that they recommend to mitigate the impact of traffic. If it were to say that that's what was needed, is only be a right in, right out, for example, then that might be something.
I mean, a one-way that would force everything onto State Street and not into the neighborhood. Plus, if you came out on 400 East, they'd have to go down 900 South. Pretty much. But
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know if a representative from Right Development is here and could speak to that possibly about whether they could do that, or they'd be willing to agree to that.
Thank you for your time this evening. We appreciate it. The question is related to 900 South.
So could you introduce yourself?
Sorry?
Yeah, introduce yourself for the record.
Spencer Wright.
Thank you.
Is the question is related to 900 South or
the question is 900 South, and right now you have a right in, right out. Or right in, whatever, left in, right out. So, or unrestricted. So would it be a possibility that could be a one-way road and all the traffic goes out on the State Street? So you don't have 650 parking stalls or cars going through that neighborhood? Just a thought.
Yeah, good question. I don't know that we've discussed that or thought about that. How would the residents that live over on 400 East, how would they get to State Street?
They go down 4th East, out on to the light to 800 South.
We've had a meeting with them.
with this gentleman about all of this, so it has been discussed. So for him to say, oh, this has never been discussed, then the gentleman that had the neighborhood meeting didn't do his job to take it back and say, this is what the neighborhood wants. This is what they need for this area because of children and everything else. Why are we even having this discussion? Maybe the neighbors should tell you how we feel and what we need since these gentlemen aren't doing their job.
Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, I was the representative at the neighborhood meeting, and I can say that did come up. And it was specifically looked at in the traffic study that was submitted along with our application. And it was evaluated as to whether or not that was one of a few mechanisms that can be used to address the level of service at the 900 South and State Street intersection. And so my apologies to Spencer that maybe I didn't address it with him is.
Yeah, no, just to clarify, what I was referring to is in the settlement agreement. We hadn't discussed that in terms of language or a site plan. That's what I was referring to.
But I guess too, the 900 South is a city road, so we can do what we want, really.
It is a city road. That's exactly right. Yeah, the access on 900 South is up to the city. Right now, the only way to restrict the access into the project would be to put in some kind of a median or have a pork chop. And that's something that we could consider. But in terms of
the road at 9th and 4th.
yeah, and again, the roads are city issues.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question about your traffic study? I have seen traffic studies that have used formulas to manipulate the numbers to get the outcome that they want. So I'm wondering if we can request a true count traffic study, something that actually shows actual impact to the area. We've got State Street there. We've got a lot of, the number of apartments that you've got there. I mean, is there a way that we could make sure that we have a traffic study that accurately defines instead of just pulling out whatever formula works to get the result that you want?
We have confidence in the engineer that did the traffic study. And in fact, when we submitted it first, there were some concerns with the city on some of the assumptions of the study. And so one of our rounds of comments was to address those concerns and adjust the study. So we submitted a study and it's been reviewed by the city's engineer. And I believe the individual who reviewed it was a traffic engineer. I don't recall his name. Perhaps he's gone, Jason, with the city at this point.
John.
Oh, John. But he reviewed it and had some comments to it. And then we resubmitted. The traffic counts that went into the study were actual counts. Someone came out and counted at the AM and PM peak hours. And the city always has the right, obviously, to hire another traffic engineer if they're worried about the veracity of the study. But it was reviewed by city staff and adjusted accordingly.
Refresh my memory, would a new traffic study be required for this new project?
We did a new traffic study for this application. Yeah.
Well, there seems to be some confusion.
Yeah.
As far as you did a new traffic study like recently, or were you
Yes.
talking about 2021?
No, just recently. Yep, when we had the neighborhood meeting, and that was a big concern of the neighbors, and we commissioned a traffic study at that time that was created for this particular application and this development agreement project.
Include the actual traffic counts, correct?
That's correct. And it talks about these access points, the distance from State Street. It contemplates different mechanisms that could be used to adjust the level of function for each intersection.
So were there any mitigation measures that you need to take? that are required?
I don't recall off the top of my head all of the conclusions of the study, but I can say that there was not a right-in, right-out required on 900 South that would affect the level of function at the intersection of 900 South and State Street. I don't recall on State Street or the other intersections, this one's been more the focus. So the answer is no, there was not any traffic mitigation efforts or mechanisms at that intersection.
So is UDOT, have you gotten approval from UDOT for that? For your State Street
The
access?
traffic study was what we call a level 2 UDOT traffic study. We anticipated that UDOT requires, so we built the study to the specifications for UDOT. We have met with UDOT on the previous application where the access on State Street is a right-in, right-out at its same location. And they approved that 1 year ago preliminarily. And so we have not got another approval. We would normally do that after zoning when we get into the site plan phase, but we have no anticipation that UDOT would have any issue with the access that they control, which is on State Street.
So I don't see do you have a deceleration lane?
Yes, this particular sheet doesn't show the striping. If you zoom in real close to that text and the call outs on State Street, there is a call out showing a decel lane that we've been built in, an additional dedication for a striping of a decel lane. Yes.
So that's a standard width.
The decel lane,
Decel
I
lane.
think, was 12 feet, if memory serves, but I would rely on my engineer to confirm that through the site plan process.
Okay.
Is there, I mean, that we just kind of jumped over this, but I don't know if this is a possibility or not, but is there a possibility if the residents wanted it, that Fourth East would be blocked off and that would just be 9th South underneath the project and traffic for the project? And then is that something that
Blocked off in the sense of like maybe a cul-de-sac there or something like that, or what?
just to make it so that 9th South was exclusively used by the project and cars weren't going from the project into the neighborhoods? I don't know if that's something that residents want or not, but
Absolutely. Also, did the scope of your traffic study extend past the 9th South and State Street intersection? Did it study at all the impact of the roads in the neighborhood at all, or was it simply that intersection alone? Because that's all you were required to study.
Yeah,
I
know.
The traffic study studied all the intersections right around the project. And then in the neighborhood meeting, there was a request that we do a particular closer look. I think there's a phenomenon where people go to Costco and they go and try to turn around and they get stuck and go in. So I brought that up with our traffic engineer and he said, that's a hard nut to crack. We don't have models or mathematics to predict that.
So no.
And so he did address it. I believe there is some verbiage in the traffic study discussing it, but in terms of a sophisticated model, I don't know that there is. And Mayor, let me be honest, I love these neighbors. I had a great interaction with them. I found that public meetings could go a little bit better if we could follow the public comment process rather than engaging directly back and forth. But anyway.
no, I appreciate that, but I'll take care of that.
Thanks. Sorry. Fair.
As far as, but back to my question on this 9th South, because it seems like there's neighborhood interest in if 9th South was basically capped at 4th East, if that would help the cause or not.
So I need to point out that there is still an access out on 4th East, right?
Oh,
So this is not just accessing directly from State and 4th. There is one over here as well.
Remove that.
And just to clarify that because this is a settlement agreement, we're treating it like a rezone. This has not gone through any full size, full site plan. The traffic study has not fully been reviewed because